Welcome back everyone to part 4 of Tower of God's Hell Train arc, where we continue the Floor of Death storyline. Spoilers are ahead, so please watch our previous parts of the Hell Train arc first before continuing with this part. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it if you leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, as it truly helps us make more of these videos. With that out of the way, let's continue with the story. Despite his injuries from taking the full force of a black hole sphere, Bomb couldn't be happier that he's finally learned this fabled technique. The God of Guardians tells him that what he did was risky, but it was nevertheless effective in allowing the boy to progress his training. In fact, the God of Guardians is more concerned about Bomb's upcoming test right now. He asks him if he could push through with it in spite of his injuries, to which Bomb says he thinks he'll be okay. Adding to that, Bomb tells his master that he feels free right now, as if his whole body has become much lighter than before. This leads him to declare that he's actually confident that he'll pass the upcoming test for the 42nd floor. Later, Bomb goes to the testing grounds within the Hell Train. His challenge is simple enough. All Bomb has to do is take out a school of large crystal shards within 1 hour. For a moment, Bomb starts to doubt himself and thinks that maybe he bit off more than he could chew by taking this test right after training at the rice pot. But all it takes for Bomb to ace the test are a few seconds, just enough time for him to test out the black hole sphere technique and disintegrate each and every crystal shard in front of him. And with that, he passes the test in flying colors. And Bomb's not alone in passing the test either, as we soon find out that Kun has also easily passed the same test during his turn. What's more is that Kun was able to show his chops as a skilled spear bearer in this ordeal. In fact, Evan takes note of this and attributes Kun's ability to use a spear to his heritage. All in all, Evan believes that Kun is an effective swingman that can fill the light bearer and spear bearer roles on a dime. Then there's Endorsi, who unsurprisingly wrecks the crystal shards when it's her turn to take the test. As you'd expect, Endorsi just wants to get these distractions over with, but Yuri reminds her that her journey isn't done, not by a long shot. And finally, we also find out that Boro and Sachi's team, which includes Barrel and Cherry, have also surpassed this challenge. On top of that, they even got Hackney to help them pass the test. As a matter of fact, Hackney did so well during this exercise that Sachi can't help but reattempt to pitch him to join his team and go to the Floor of Death. However, Hackney remains firm in his decision that he's not going to do that. According to him, there's no way that he'll go to that floor. Hackney then warns Sachi's team that the Floor of Death is really not a place where people should be. So much so that Hackney explains that its nickname isn't just some sensational garbage meant to strike fear in the hearts of regulars. It really is the Floor of Death. Specifically, if any living being enters there, they become surrounded by the dead and other monsters. And according to Hackney, just setting foot on the Floor of Death will make you feel like your soul is being devoured. Listening to all this, Sachi wonders if Hackney has ever visited the Floor of Death. In reply, he lets them know that he didn't just visit that wasteland in the past, he actually used to live there. Hackney then adds that it's a place so dangerous that you might even end up losing your life before you reach the actual floor, since there are powerful creatures called gatekeepers guarding it from any and all visitors. And with that, Hackney advises his companions to just forget about going there. Later, Sachi and Boro discuss all the information they learned from Hackney inside their quarters. From there, Sachi is able to surmise that Rachel is probably tricking Hackney to get him to work for her team. So the two old friends conclude that even though Hackney might not be a bad guy, they still have to watch their backs around him. All of a sudden, Kun enters the room to check up on them. Boro and Sachi ask him if he's done with his special training, to which he replies that he is. Although, Kun does admit that he still has a long way to go. On that note, they hear a lot of noise coming from Endorsi's room and we find out that Yuri is currently forcing the younger princess to train. And as if on cue, Bomb appears right behind Kun when he asks about his best friend. After a bit of catching up, Kun expresses his concerns about how their group's numbers have dwindled since they decided to go to the Floor of Death. Still, it seems everyone who has committed to this mission is ready to go. Later, inside one of the other rooms, Yuri and Evan meet as the Hell Train continues to get closer to the Floor of Death. Yuri asks her guide if he's been there before, to which Evan says that he had only visited the Floor of Death once, but this would be the first time that he'll actually be going to its center. In any case, Yuri and Evan conclude that each and every one of them is going to be in danger once they reach it, so their best course of action would be to be on guard at all times. Shortly after, Bomb and his group notice that the light from the tower has disappeared as the train gets closer to the Floor of Death. In fact, everything outside the Hell Train just becomes pitch black the closer they get to their destination. As this happens, Bomb can already feel like he's headed for a place that he absolutely needs to go to. It takes another month for Bomb and his group to reach the Floor of Death, and they use the intervening period to rest and prepare themselves for the upcoming journey. They discover that they finally reached the place when Poro makes an announcement on the Hell Train's PA system. For the first time, we get a glimpse of the Floor of Death, and it's a rocky wasteland surrounded by flowing red liquid. Kun, Bomb, and the others see the landscape from the train's window and agree that it's as terrifying as rumors say it is. Horian then approaches and tells him that it's time to head out. Unlike the other stops on the Hell Train's path, the Floor of Death has no station. As such, they simply have to jump off the train when they're ready to leave. Kun takes issue with this and tells Horian that there's nothing out there, but according to her, that's only because they haven't seen the real Floor of Death yet. According to Aryun, the red liquid that covers this place happens to be the blood and remains of the administrator that the Irregular and Ryu took out ages ago. And in order for their team to actually reach the floor of death, they have to go through it. Aryun then warns everyone to not believe what their eyes see from here on out, since the floor of death is hostile to the living. In another part of the train, Rachel informs her team that they've arrived on the floor of death too. Joaquin clarifies if he could really get off the Hell Train, and Rachel explains that there aren't any issues with doing that. Because remember guys, Joaquin is bound by a spell that forbids him from setting foot outside the Hell Train. But according to the tower's rules, the floor of death neutralizes all contracts with the administrators, as well as any spells. Joaquin can't hide the fact that he's looking forward to getting off the train, which then prompts Wanyan to tease him a bit. On the other hand, Rachel asks Yura for a status report on Hockney. Yura tells her that she's thrown some bait to the guy into believing that the piece of the painting he's been looking for is on the floor of death. On top of that, Yura informs Rachel that they're going to hold off from revealing their identities to Hockney and allow him to continue traveling with Bomb's group for now. Somewhere else aboard the vehicle, Karaka reaches a closed door and wonders if it's one of the rumored hidden cars of the Hell Train. His investigation is cut short, however, when he hears Poro's announcement about their arrival on the floor of death, so Karaka ultimately chooses to leave the door and head out instead. At the same time, Bomb, Yuri, and all of their friends prepare to jump off the train and proceed with their quest. Before they do though, Kun gathers the group for one last huddle. Here we find out that the Emily app still hasn't yielded any information about Wanyan, despite them using the keywords Yellow Prince. We also find out that Joaquin's final clone has hidden herself somewhere inside the Hell Train that not even Emily could locate her. This is to make sure that Joaquin doesn't get the upper hand while she waits for Bomb and his friends to return after their journey to the floor of death. Kun then makes the announcement that they're going to jump off the train to reach their destination. Understandably enough, Boro has issues with his egress method, which forces Hwaryun to go on another exposition about what the red liquid is. But we find out this time around that the red liquid is actually made up of Shinsu, so jumping in it won't lead to your demise. Evan and Yuri arrive the moment Hwaryun finishes debriefing the group, and Evan attests to everything that the red-haired guy just told everyone. Later, Kun and Boro open the train's doors and get ready to jump. As is typical of Kun, he tells Boro to get in there first, and if it's safe, they're going to follow him. Basically, Kun just turned the poor guy into their team's guinea pig. In turn, Boro gets cold feet and backs out. However, Hockney approaches them and tells Boro that there's nothing to worry about. Hockney is then introduced to the rest of the group. They find out that he changed his mind about not going to the floor of death, since Emily informed him he could find his painting there. This information instantly raises a flag for Kun, and he easily concludes that Rachel is using Hockney. But this is Kun we're talking about. So he comes up with a plan to try and turn the tables. According to him, if he and his team play their cards right, they could end up using Hockney against Rachel. With that in mind, Kun invites Hockney to join the group, which he accepts. He then asks Bomb and Kun if they're leaving now, but Kun tells him to wait just a bit. All of a sudden, Yura appears with Wanyan, who has covered himself heavily in order to prevent his old friends from recognizing him. Yura tells Bomb's group to move aside so that they could get off the train. In reply, Kun reveals that they've actually been waiting for Team Rachel to arrive near the entrance to ambush them, which explains why Kun told Hockney to hold off from jumping earlier. Kun surmises that Yura has hidden Rachel inside her luggage. All the while, Bomb wonders who her companion is, not having a clue that it's Wanyan underneath those rags. Kun then tells Yura to let Rachel out so that they could settle their score once and for all. Yura thinks it's a trap, since Kun and this group have Yuri on their side. But Yuri explicitly tells Yura that princesses like her are not allowed to attack regulars on the train. Plus, she has no interest in getting involved with Rachel's squabble with Kun and the others. Curiously, Yuri notices that Yura is from the same family as her, the Ha family. In turn, Yura feels at ease that the princess won't intervene. But instead of releasing Rachel from her luggage, she instead offers Kun a deal. Specifically, she'd tell them about the thorn fragment and Wanyan's team whereabouts if Kun's group lets them pass. Bomb urges his best friend to take Yura up on her deal. In the end, Kun does so, considering that they have no other choice. Shortly after, they go to a nearby room and use Kun's lighthouse to make sure that Yura doesn't escape before fulfilling her end of the bargain. With the ground rules set, Bomb first asks Yura where Wanyan is. She dances around the topic and simply answers by telling them that they're probably hiding somewhere on the train. But to Yura's credit, she does tell the truth about how they caught them in the trap earlier. However, she lies when she tells Bomb and Kun that Kasano betrayed their team and decided to save Horyang. Remember guys, part of Wanyan's deal with Rachel was to have Kasano cure Horyang in the first place. Still, finding out about all this eases Bomb's mind a bit. But not Kun though, because he's smart. He starts to become even more suspicious of Yura after hearing what she had to say. For one, if Wanyan did escape, then why haven't they seen him? On top of that, Kun asks himself why Yura would go so far as to make a deal with their team to tell them all of this information. In the end, Kun concludes that something bad probably happened to their friends. Yura then continues to hold up her end of the deal by telling Bomb and Kun about where they might locate the thorn fragment. To do this, she gives them a clue that goes, "Find the house where the princess of the deep-colored sea lives and ask her for it, the place where 3 waterfalls flow. If you go there and follow the red light, you will reach the place with the thorn fragment." and Dorsey, who's nearby during all of this, starts paying attention when she hears about the Princess of the Deep-Colored Sea. Meanwhile, Yuri tells Bomb and Kun that that's all she knows. When Kun tries to ask for more information about the Thorn Fragment, Yuri tells him that she and her team really don't know anything else other than that clue. She then suspects that Kun is planning on backstabbing her even after holding her end of the deal. Kun pretty much admits this, and when Bomb tries to stop him, he tells his best friend about his suspicions about what Team Rachel did to Wanyan and the others. And Kun isn't making any empty threats either. He was just about ready to strike down Yuri when Karaka dropped down from the ceiling of the room they're in. And as you'd expect from Karaka, he declares that he's going to take out each and every one of them simply because they're in his way. He then summons his black orbs, while Yuri jumps into action to give Karaka another beating. Just below them, the black orbs start to disrupt the entire room. Yuri sees this as an opportunity to escape, so she grabs her luggage and prepares to use it to make their exit. Meanwhile, Yuri can't believe that Karaka's still alive, since she was sure that she flatlined him during their previous encounter. In reply, Karaka messes with the princess and suggests that he's an immortal god. But Yuri doesn't fall for it, so she gives the Fug Slayer one of her devastating overhand left to send Karaka flying. Mid-flight, Karaka passes by Yuri and calls to her. He asks if Joaquin and Rachel are inside her luggage. Understandably, Yuri answers by asking Karaka who the heck he is. Of course, Karaka takes this opportunity to self-advertise and refer to himself as the god of Fug. On the other hand, Wanyan stays quiet, but he does notice that Karaka is the same guy that Hwaryun told him about before. Karaka then shows just how much of a presumptuous jerk he is by not waiting for Yuri's answer, and instead pulls her and Wanyan close as he demands that they come with him to the floor of death. At the same time, Yuri tries to blast Karaka with her Shinsu, but the Fug Slayer manages to dodge it with the help of one of his black orbs. Yuri notices that her aim's off because the floor of death might be messing with her Shinsu flow. Karaka then emerges from his black ball and tries to kidnap Bomb on his way out by hurling another dark orb at him. Bomb realizes he can't dodge this, so he charges up a black hole sphere in his hand to counter Karaka's advances. However, Yuri orders Evan to rescue Bomb before he can confront the Fug Slayer, so Evan uses one of his Adam's gloves to swoop in and take Bomb away. This forces Bomb to let go of his black hole sphere and just chuck it randomly. Meanwhile, Karaka uses his black orbs to distract Yuri, while he and Team Rachel sink into the red liquid. In the aftermath, Evan gives Bomb a well-deserved scolding after he tried to face off against Karaka. But then, Evan notices a bright light shining from above. When he turns, he sees that the light is coming from the black hole sphere that Bomb hurled just now. What's more is that it's disintegrating Karaka's Shinsu slowly. Witnessing this, all Evan could ask himself is what the hell Bomb has been learning on the train. Evan's mind then wanders, as he recalls how Bomb started out as an unassuming kid but is now growing in power at an unbelievable pace. So much so that he can't help but compare Bomb to another absolute powerhouse, Yurik. But what concerns him the most is the idea that by training Bomb, they're raising a monster that will one day become the greatest threat to everyone in the tower. Evan's musings are only interrupted when Bomb calls out for and asks him to loosen the grip on the Adam's glove. Evan and Yuri then regroup and discuss how it even is possible that Karaka is alive, despite confirming his demise during their fight at Namehunt Station. In the end, Evan has no answer for the princess when she asks if there's a possibility that Karaka might actually be an immortal. According to Evan, only Jahad and the lords of the 10 great families have made a deal with the administrator that could give someone eternal life. In any case, Yuri concludes that Karaka is just another guy that they have to be on the lookout for while they're on the floor of death. Later, we see that Hockney has jumped right into the red liquid and tries to convince Boral to follow suit. As he puts it, they all have to enter the floor of death at the same time in order to go through the same pathway. Otherwise, they'll get thrown into random entrances, which would be more dangerous for their entire group. Still, Boral's too much of a wuss to take the leap. So his old friend Sachi is forced to literally kick him in the butt to get him in there. Bomb and Kun then follow suit. A moment later, and we see them drifting under the sea of red liquid. Curiously, this experience makes Bomb feel as if he's returned to a place where he once lived. Bomb then spots blue light some distance away and starts following it. Hockney notices that Bomb's straying from the group, so he attempts to fetch the boy. All of a sudden, a huge current occurs, which separates Hockney and Bomb from the rest of the team. Seeing this, Yuri tries to grab Hockney and Bomb with Shinsu, but she instantly realizes that she can't use her Shinsu here. On the other hand, Kun tries to follow Bomb, but Sachi is able to hold him back, telling him that their best course of action would be to stick to one another. Meanwhile, Hockney realizes that Bomb has gone unconscious. To prevent them from getting separated, he uses his rod to grab Bomb, as they continue to ride the wild current. Some distance away, Kun asks Dorsey if they could use Bongbong to pick up the two, but it's a no-go. All of a sudden, they notice that the red liquid has suddenly disappeared all around them. A second later, Kun and the rest of the group find themselves falling towards a cavern within the actual floor of death. Yuri uses her power to envelop everyone inside a bubble and break their fall. They then slowly land, as Yuri suspects that there's a connection between this place and why she can't properly use Shinsu earlier. The group eventually reaches solid ground. Kun tells everyone that it's most likely that Hockney and Bomb have entered the floor of death through another pathway. Still, this doesn't put them at ease knowing that Hockney could turn on Bomb at any second if Rachel uses Emily to sway him. But they have other more pressing matters to attend to at the moment. That's because Endorsi has just reminded everyone that there's someone else missing from their team aside from Bomb and Hockney, Hwaryun. Endorsi suspects that Hwaryun planned Bomb's separation from the rest of the group. Yuri, on the other hand, asks Evan if he saw this coming, since he has the abilities of a guide. Evan lets Yuri know that his prescience doesn't work in this place, and given that, he surmises chances are slim that Hwaryun saw the future and went down a different path. All of a sudden, the entire group stops in their tracks when they hear something howling from the other end of the room. They then turn around to spot a pair of flaming red eyes staring at them. Meanwhile, Hockney and Bomb emerge at a different section of the floor of death. Hockney starts to get antsy since he hasn't adjusted to this place after being gone for so long. To make matters worse, Bomb is still unconscious. Realizing their situation, Hockney starts to get worried about how he could fend off a gatekeeper if one appears. The hits just keep on coming too, because a huge creature does reveal itself in front of Hockney right after this. What's more is that this creature knows Hockney, as it asks him what he's even doing back here on the floor of death. The story then moves to a flashback from 3 months earlier. We find ourselves somewhere near Namehunt Station and get the reveal that Yua has survived the battle, although she remains unconscious. A couple of guys talk about how they should wake her up soon, since they have to catch up to the Hell Train too. One of them tells the other that Bomb and the others are on the floor of death before reminding his partner that they have unfinished business there as well. In the end, we find out that these two men are none other than Yurik Mizuno and his pal, Yuji. There's another bit of good news too, as we also discover that Hong didn't meet his end during the battle at Namehunt Station. He thanks Yuji and Yurik for rescuing them, but Yuji clarifies that the only reason he was able to save them was because of Yua's flame powers. We then find out that the explosion that occurred when Yuri used her devastating rose petal shower came from Yua, and she unwittingly used it to protect them from the full force of Yuri's technique. This then gave Yuji a chance to swoop in and rescue them. More interestingly, Yuji explains that Yua's flames aren't like the ones you'd usually see in a Yon family member. For one, we get the reveal that Yua actually belongs to the Yon's direct line, since her flames are only passed down within the main branch's female descendants. Yuji surmises that this flame had awakened momentarily to protect Yua's life. He then reassures Hong that she'll wake up as soon as the power of the flame returns to her. With that settled, Hong asks Yuji where Rak is. Well guys, here's where the bad bit of news comes in. As Yurik puts it, he never saw a third member in their party when he rescued them. Hong is left in shock when he learns about this and could only wonder if Rak's truly gone. After that, Yurik confirms Bomb and the others' location from Hong and decides to head over to the floor of death too. In the present, we find out that the huge creature standing in front of Hockney is being controlled by one of his old friends, Mata. Shortly after, Mata gives Hockney and a still unconscious Bomb a ride on his large creature. We then discover that Mata is able to use this monster as his own mobile home using a blue orb. He then asks Hockney who Bomb is, to which he says that he's just a guy that he met by coincidence. Hockney then asks Mata a favor, to hand Bomb over to his friends if he comes across them. When Mata asks where Hockney is planning to go, we find out that he's headed for a place called South City. Mata then freaks out upon hearing this, telling Hockney that someone named Hell Joe will most likely take him out if he finds out Hockney is back on the floor of death. Still, there's no stopping Hockney, as he tells Mata how he needs to look for the red light, the painting that contains his soul. All of a sudden, Mata's mobile home, which he calls Manyleg, is rocked by a huge tremor when a gatekeeper suddenly appears. Kun's group are also facing the same problem right now, while Yuri and Evan decide to make this encounter a teachable moment for the regulars. As such, Yuri informs the group that she and Evan will hang back to assess their skills. If they fail to defeat the gatekeeper, then that would only mean they're not ready for the floor of death and will get sent back to the train. Kun, Sachi, and Boro deliberate how they'll approach the gatekeeper, but Endorsi makes the decision for them. That is to say, the princess jumps straight into action and kicks the gatekeeper in the face. Endorsi then peppers the creature with close-range strikes before unleashing a technique she learned from Yuri called Chiffon Sword. Seeing this display surprises Evan, while Yuri watches on as her student makes her proud. The hit from the Chiffon Sword sends the gatekeeper crashing into the ground. But they're not out of it yet, as Endorsi notices a small yellow ball pop out of the gatekeeper's body and zoom past her. The princess immediately realizes that this freaky yellow ball is the gatekeeper's main body, while Kun wonders why it's been hiding inside the large monster in the first place. The yellow orb then starts attacking Endorsi, who uses Bong Bong to dance around its barrage. As you'd expect from Endorsi, she gets bored of the whole engagement and tags in Kun to replace her. Kun, of course, is taken by surprise. After all, he's the kind of guy who likes to plan first, attack later. Still, Kun makes it known that he's ready to step up to the plate when he shows us the fruits of his special training by using a skill called Enakor using his lighthouse. Unknown to them, a small one-eyed creature inside the floor of death reports to someone that it has spotted 7 intruders within their domain and that they've taken the bait. The creature then says that they should call someone named Richie Follow-On. Meanwhile, we discover that Enakor is actually an upgraded version of Kun's lighthouse. It appears as 3 separate cubes, with each one of them bearing a checkered pattern. On the sidelines, Evan gets all smug and tells Yuri how he taught Kun an especially sneaky new skill. In the middle of the battlefield, Kun is relieved that he was able to properly summon Enakor and tells Boro to hold his needle under one of his lighthouses, right where it's shining its light. Boro follows the order but starts to panic when they notice the yellow ball zooming toward its direction. Sachi jumps in to slow it down with his mace and tells Kun to hurry up and do whatever he needs to do. Kun makes it in the nick of time as Enakor activates an ability called Mystery Sphere, which traps the yellow ball in an impenetrable sphere. Nearby, Evan explains to Yuri that Enakor is pretty much a beefed-up lighthouse that can handle the calculations of 9 lighthouses within a single unit. Moreover, each side of Enakor conducts its own calculations, and it all culminates in the form of the Mystery Sphere to capture opponents. Evan also reveals that he used a Class A kit that was secretly made in the factory to enhance Kun's lighthouse's specs and allow it to become an Enakor. And according to him, doing that was extremely expensive and illegal. The fact that Evan did something shitty makes Yuri tease him a bit. But Evan tells her that he really does think that the Lightbearer position is essential in their survival on the floor of death. So he placed his trust in Kun. And by the looks of it, Kun is showing that he's capable of supporting the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Kun starts having fun seeing the yellow orb bounce around the Mystery Sphere. He eventually gets bored and decides to end the fight by switching Enakor from its Mystery Sphere mode to an even newer ability called Red Crystal. The yellow ball then charges up energy to break through the barrier. When Kun sees this, he tells Boro to hold on to his needle as tightly as possible. In the blink of an eye, the yellow orb suddenly appears right in front of Boro's needle, allowing him to defeat it with one stab. In the aftermath, Kun explains that red mode allows him to seal off the enemy and teleport it to the desired place with the enemy's force. Simply put, Kun used red mode as a counterattack skill where he waited for the yellow orb to charge up power inside the Mystery Sphere. Then, once it tries to break through the sphere, Kun uses that power against it and teleports the critter to Boro's location. And with its momentum, it pretty much drove itself right into the tip of Boro's needle. Unknown to them, the one-eyed creature continues to stalk the group and tells someone that they go in. Meanwhile, we see that Mata is using Many-Leg to fight the gatekeeper that appeared in front of them. Hockney then uses his eyes to direct Mata and ultimately put a swift end to the gatekeeper and its main body. After the battle, Mata expresses how impressed he is with Hockney's eyes and asks his old friend if he has started using them again. In reply, Hockney admits that he's been activating his special eyes a bit. Mata then reveals that Richie indicates a high-level gatekeeper, also known as a Richie-level gatekeeper. He tells Hockney that they should clean up the remains of the yellow orb before one of those Richies arrive. Hockney then tries to go off on his own and leave Bomb with Mata, but his old friend reminds him that the final gatekeeper will most likely take his soul once he reaches the hall leading to his destination. And props to Mata because he is one solid dude. He ends up volunteering to help Hockney get past the final gatekeeper by hiding him and Bomb inside Many-Leg. Not long after, Bomb has another vision of the light he saw earlier. He finally wakes up when he hears Mata and Hockney talking about Many-Leg and how they finally reach the entrance to the hall where the final gatekeeper stands on guard. Shortly after that, Mata springs his plan. He approaches the final gatekeeper inside Many-Leg and tells the gigantic creature that he's here to check for intruders that might have snuck into their domain. He can leave after that. At the same time, Bomb sits up and asks Hockney where they are. Hockney tells Bomb to stay quiet, as he explains that the final gatekeeper is a high Richie monk that would take their souls if he finds out that they're hiding inside Many-Leg. Back at Kun's group, Dorsey gets all jealous of Kun's Enakor as they continue to search for Bomb and Hockney. In the middle of this, we find out from Evan that Kun is actually only able to use Enakor because of Beta. That's because Beta has been kept inside one of Kun's lighthouses this whole time, with the reason for it so that Beta could join them on the Hell Train. And specifically, it's because of Beta's status as a living ignition weapon that he's able to help Kun create the calculations that would activate Enakor. However, Evan also reveals that given Kun's current state, his version of Enakor has a critical weakness. That is to say, if the specific lighthouse that keeps Beta is attacked, he'll no longer be able to use Enakor. Evan knows that Kun has to keep this a secret at all costs, otherwise they'll be at a disadvantage. Eventually, Kun's group encounters a giant stag beetle, a creature that Yuri is more than excited to beat down. While this is happening, Hockney gives Bomb an introduction to the creatures of the Floor of Death. We find out that the gatekeepers are divided into 3 classes. First, there are the Watchmen, which are the large humanoid creatures that they've already encountered. Then there are the Eye Bugs, the one-eyed creatures we saw stalking our heroes earlier. Lastly, there are leeches, immortal gigantic bugs like the stag beetle that Yuri and her group just came across. Hockney goes on to explain that these 3 gatekeeper classes work in conjunction with one another. Whenever you defeat a Watchman, one of the yellow orbs inside it emerges in order to give the Eye Bug time to call in the leeches and overwhelm any intruder on the Floor of Death. Hockney also tells Bomb that any person who has had their soul taken by the final gatekeeper is doomed to stay on the Floor of Death for all eternity. By the time Hockney finishes dumping exposition, the final gatekeeper tells Mata that he can't enter the hall. What's worse is that the final gatekeeper detects Bomb and Hockney inside Many-Leg. But the final gatekeeper seems reasonable enough, as he tells the 2 intruders that they could go in if they surrender their souls to him. To do that, the final gatekeeper calls on a couple of cute divine seafish called Soul Devourers. Meanwhile, Hockney urges Bomb to stay on Many-Leg and regroup with his friends, but Bomb insists that he has to find something deep within the Floor of Death, so he can't turn back now. Hockney starts to suspect that Bomb is letting on more than he is, but he also knows that there's no point in stopping him from entering the hall. So Hockney gives in and the 2 present themselves to the final gatekeeper. The Soul Devourers then proceed to collect their souls. The soul devourer assigned to Hockney notices that his soul is incomplete, but the one assigned to Bomb gets an even bigger surprise when it becomes overwhelmed by the number of souls stored within Bomb, all thanks to him absorbing the spirits of Joaquin's victims. This surprises everyone, from the final gatekeeper to Hockney. Bomb then realizes that he can't reveal his true identity to the final gatekeeper, so he just respectfully tries to ask if he could take his own soul and leave the rest of the spirits inside him alone. But the final gatekeeper immediately registers Bomb as a threat and, in response, attacks him with a rain of Shinsu bamboo spears. This makes Bomb summon his thorn, and it just goes south from there, as the final gatekeeper becomes even more determined to test him out when he sees the weapon. Hockney then uses his skills as an observer and directs Bomb on how to counter the bamboo spears. As he puts it, Bomb has to target the hollow center of the spears to destroy them. Bomb follows the advice and uses a black hole sphere to wreck one of the gigantic bamboo shoots zipping towards them. The final gatekeeper, the soul devourers, Mata, and even Hockney can't believe how Bomb is able to dismantle a bamboo spear with a single shot. Seeing how much of a threat Bomb is, the final gatekeeper decides to take him out with even more bamboo spears. But all of a sudden, he receives a message from an eyebug telling him to stand down under orders from the so-called hermit of the North City, a woman named Garam. Back at Yuri's group, they realize that the giant stag beetle just keeps on regenerating whenever they flatline it. Meanwhile, deep within the floor of death, Garam keeps an eye on Bomb. Her henchman asks her if they should make a move on the boy, but she denies it. According to Garam, she's really looking forward to meeting Bomb in person. She then steps out of her office and reminisces about the floor of death. And it's here we discover that Bomb shares the same power as the legendary Enryu, the same irregular who took out the administrator on this floor. Back at the hall's entrance, the final gatekeeper is surprised that Garam has taken interest in outsiders for the first time since Yurik Mizuno, but he ends up following Garam's order, so he lets them pass without taking their souls. However, the final gatekeeper does have one condition for Bomb and Hockney, that they can only stay within the floor of death's inner city for 1 week, or they'll become prey for the dead. Bomb and Hockney agree to this. Later, inside the floor of death, Hockney goes on another exposition dump about how much the entire floor of death is pretty much the lifeless body of an administrator. It's nothing we haven't heard before, like how the red liquid is basically made of Shinsu. However, an interesting point Hockney makes is that the passages you could find on this floor are made up of the administrator's blood vessels. Hockney adds that the blood vessel they're currently traversing is the largest gateway that leads to the floor of death's inner city and lifeline, and currently, a certain warlord is trying to take control of it. In addition, they could also use the smaller passages, but it would be a riskier route to take. Hockney's lecture is interrupted when Mata pulls him aside. He tells his old friend that Bomb is suspicious as heck, given what they've seen. So he tries to convince Hockney to ditch the boy. However, Hockney admits that he does feel a sense of kinship with someone like Bomb and tells Mata to basically not judge a book by its cover. To Mata's credit, he actually finds it good that his old friend is willing to open himself up to, well, finding more new friends like Bomb. So Mata ultimately agrees and now even gets excited that Hockney has someone to travel with. However, their conversation is cut short when Garam makes her way into Manyleg and suddenly sits atop its orb. The three dudes become alerted to her presence. As Garam greets Bomb, it pretty much tells him that she knows Endorsi and Yuri are traveling with him. On the other hand, Mata tries to confront Garam about the orb, for fear that she might end up messing with Manyleg's controls. Hockney stops him though, and informs his old friend that the woman in front of them seems way beyond their pay grade. In the meantime, Garam continues to have a talk with Bomb and mentions Yurik. This leads Bomb to ask if she knows him, and she confirms it. But she does express the opinion that she has no plans of following someone like Yurik. Before they could continue their conversation, Garam touches the orb and instantly takes control of Manyleg. Back at Yuri's group, they've decided to go on a tactical retreat against the giant stag beetle. Eventually, Yuri gets sick of running and tells Evan to take the rest of their team to safety while she deals with the monster. Yuri's not kidding around either, as she uses her patented rose shower technique to make sure the stag beetle gets taken out. All of a sudden, a red-haired girl pops out from a hole somewhere within the passageway and tells them to come with her. She informs Evan and the others that Hwaryun sent her here, while Kun notices how much this girl resembles Hwaryun's distinct red hair. Not long after, we find that Garam has led Bomb, Hockney, and Mata to her domain, North City. They then hop off Manyleg when Garam tells them that they have to ride another beast to get where they're going. Mata is super salty about how Garam hijacked Manyleg from him and refuses to come with Garam. In reply, she tells him that she really just needs to have a word with Bomb, so Mata and Hockney are welcome to turn back as they please. Bomb agrees with this too, as he tells his companions that Garam might know something that he's looking for. But again, Mata proves to us that friendship beats mortal danger when he tells Bomb that he and Hockney will go with him. Hockney actually gets a bit concerned about this, since he still has to look for red light. But Mata convinces him that this detour won't take longer than a day. In addition to that, he coyly tells his old friend that maybe he'll discover something interesting during this trip. So Hockney agrees to join Bomb, while Garam calls forth a giant winged beast named Yadu. Mata sees this and makes it known that no ordinary person could control a giant winged beast, which makes him wonder who Garam really is. Later, inside Yadu, Garam invites Bomb to the next room for a private word. Mata attempts to snoop around, but Hockney prevents him from doing so. In the other room, Garam tells Bomb to ask her any question he'd like, so he starts by finding out about her name. We then get the big reveal that Grom isn't just the boss of the Floor of Death's North City. In truth, she's Jahad, one of Jahad's princesses who went missing ages ago. Not only that, but Grom also happens to be the first princess in history to possess 2 of the 13 months, with the second one being none other than Yuri. Upon learning this, Bomb remembers the clue that Yura told them and wonders if he's on the right track. He then asks Grom what she's doing in a place like this, and we find out that she actually went into hiding after betraying the Jahad family. This stems from the fact that she found out about the Jahad family's dark secrets. And oh man, does she know a lot of dirt about Jahad in the tower. For one, she tells Bomb that she knows the mysterious process that goes into selecting the princesses of Jahad and why they're set up to fight with one another. Then we also find out that she's aware why the princesses are forbidden from rising to higher positions. If that wasn't big enough, Garam goes on to reveal that she discovered what kind of person their father, Jahad, truly is. But the biggest bombshell that Garam drops is when she tells Bomb that she knows about his existence. In fact, she's known about Bomb for a long time now. With that, she tells the boy that he deserves to know the truth about himself and offers to tell him about it. Bomb doesn't hesitate accepting the offer. On the other hand, Garam warns Bomb that it's up to him to take responsibility for whatever he's about to hear. Meanwhile, we find that Yuri's group has linked up with the red-haired girl as they make their way through a long stairway. Dorsey is not too happy to find out that Hwaryun went off on her own to find an easier path within the Floor of Death, while Yuri chastises Evan for not knowing his way around this place at all. In the middle of their trek, the red-haired girl relays a message for Yuri, one that Hwaryun told her to deliver. It specifically involves a favor that Hwaryun wants Yuri to do in exchange for showing them the way around the Floor of Death. She accepts, and the girl tells the princess that there's a very bad person somewhere around the floor and Hwaryun would like Yuri to get rid of them. When Boro asks who it is, the red-haired girl tells him that it's the ruler of South City. We then get a glimpse of this place, where we see that South City's ruler is a man named King Heljo. In the meantime, we find out that Heljo's gatekeepers know that Karaka has also headed their way, so they ask him for orders. We then find out that Heljo is kind of a geek, as he tells his men to stop disturbing him while he reads some comics. Back inside Yuta, Garam explicitly tells Bomb that she would only reveal part of his origin for fear that he's not ready to hear the rest of it just yet. However, she does promise Bomb that he'd find out about his whole story eventually. With no other choice, he agrees to this condition. To start things off, she asks Bomb how much she knows about Jahad. While this is happening, we also discover that Karaka, Yura, and Wanyan have arrived on the Floor of Death. Yura asks the Fug Slayer if he wants her to release Joaquin now, but Karaka's smart, so he refuses. According to him, letting Joaquin free would mean that he'd have to protect 3 people instead of just 2. So for now, he orders Yura to keep Joaquin and Rachel inside her luggage. Team Rachel also discovers that the rumors they heard about the Floor of Death only needing a single soul sacrifice were false when Karaka tells them that everyone who tries to get inside the Floor of Death needs to have their soul taken from them. However, the Fug Slayer also tells him to stop worrying, since he knows a secret route to its inner city that won't require them to surrender their souls. They then make the trek toward their destination. In the meantime, Yura starts to get worried that she and Team Rachel don't stand a chance against Karaka if he tries to claim the Thorn Fragment too. Wanyan shares the same thoughts too, and believes that he has to wait for the right opportunity to strike. Back at Yuri's group, the red-haired girl gives him a full lecture about Heljo's origins and details about the inner city of the Floor of Death. As she puts it, the Floor of Death is divided into 2 realms, North City and South City. North City is ruled by someone named Grand Dali, while South City is presided over by Heljo. Now, Heljo has a reputation for being a bit of a tyrant who traps anyone who opposes him in a place called the Eternal Prison. According to the girl, Heljo actually started as a hole repairman, a person in charge of dealing with the passages and pathways on the Floor of Death. In fact, Heljo became the best hole repairman in all of the land that South City's former ruler, Grand Dasa, appointed him as top hole master. However, Heljo was not content with the position, so he purposely rearranged the Floor of Death's holes to suit his own will. That is, he pretty much took over control of South City's life in Shinsu, which made him a very powerful figure in this place. Afterwards, Heljo usurped Grand Dasa's position as ruler of South City by using the Floor of Death's pathways as leverage. After this whole story, Yuri asks the girl why they're asking her for help, and as Evan adds, a guide from Fug like Hwaryun wouldn't have a reason to rope in a Jahad princess into this problem if it was just a simple matter of rebellion. But then the girl informs him that Heljo has actually been sending fragments of the thorn to the outside world. Everyone is shocked to learn about this, and Kun asks her if Heljo was the one who first discovered the thorns. It's here that we get to shed more light on Hockney too, because according to the girl, it was some monster with strange eyes who actually found out about the thorns. Eventually, Heljo learned about this and started exporting the thorns to the outside world. Alarmingly, the girl tells Yuri and the others that Heljo has already sent out 3 thorns from the Floor of Death. She has no idea where 2 of those things ended up, but she knows that the 3rd one is the same thorn that Bomb possesses. On top of that, she informs the group that the final thorn fragment hasn't been found yet, but it's somewhere on the Floor of Death. So it's no surprise at all that Heljo is also looking for this final fragment. All in all, Hwaryun plans on taking out Heljo to prevent him from targeting Bomb. Yuri still has her suspicions about the girl and Hwaryun after listening to all of this, but she ultimately accepts the deal. But Yuri also amends the agreement by adding that the girl would also help them regroup with Bomb. The girl agrees as they continue their journey. Back at South City, one of Heljo's underlings, Song, tries to rush him to give out an order about what they should do with Karaka. Song goes on to tell him that Karaka might be coming to claim the thorn fragment that Heljo promised him long ago, but South City's ruler doesn't care. Still, Song continues to bug Heljo about this promise, and we find out why he's so salty about the Fug Slayer. It turns out that Heljo and Karaka's deal involves handing over the thorn fragment in exchange for getting everyone in South City out of the Floor of Death. But as Heljo puts it, Karaka has just been sending them relief goods in the form of books and a single TV set connected to the outside world. Heljo goes on to say that he even opened the secret passage for Karaka that leads him straight to this place safely. So it's perfectly understandable why he doesn't want to deal with the Fug Slayer anymore. It's just bad business. Heljo gets so heated that he orders Song to tell Karaka that their deal's off. He then sends off Song, because you don't stand between a man and his comic book. Song reluctantly leaves after one final attempt at convincing his boss to reconsider, but Heljo is hearing none of it at all. Later, Song starts lashing out by himself, as he blames Hockney for leaving them, since he's the only guy who could effectively locate the thorn fragment for them. South City's military commander, Charlotte the Temptress, then steps in and checks up on Song. He tells her what's up, but Charlotte expresses that there's really no point in escaping the Floor of Death, given that each of them has no soul. But it's different for Song. To him, leaving this place would mean that he could reclaim his soul and start climbing the tower again. According to him, he and Heljo would seize the entire tower's tremendous wealth and power once they get out of the Floor of Death. Their conversation is cut short when an iBug informs him that Karaka has finally arrived in South City. Shortly after, Song and Charlotte escort Karaka to Heljo's quarters. Heljo instantly shows that Karaka is not welcome here when they come face to face with each other. On the other hand, Karaka gaslights Heljo and tells him that he's delivered all the promised goods to him before asking about the thorn fragment. This just enrages Heljo, who reminds the Fug Slayer that he still hasn't held up his end of the bargain, since Karaka originally agreed to free Heljo and his subjects from the Floor of Death. So Karaka backpedals, while Heljo continues to berate him for failing to live up to his promise. But what really sends Heljo off is the fact that the TV Karaka sent him only had the news channel. Oh, and it's not even an LCD TV, it's a crappy old CRT one. Heljo gets so mad about this, while Karaka tries to defuse the situation. In the end, Karaka gives in and tells Heljo that everything will be resolved if he brings him the intruders, telling him that one of them has the power to get Heljo and his subjects out of the Floor of Death. Meanwhile, Garam continues with her question about Bomb's knowledge about Jahad. Bomb responds by pretty much telling her what everyone else knows, that Jahad was an irregular who climbed the tower with the lords of the 10 great families and made a deal with the administrator to become its king. He also knows that Jahad has an immortal body, commands powerful Shinsu, and that he's an enemy of Fug. Garam then gives us a crash course on the origins of Jahad's princesses. According to her, the Order of the Princesses of Jahad was originally proposed by Po Badao Gustang, one of the 10 lords, to find a suitable heir for Jahad. That's because Jahad's blood is so strong that he couldn't create a child with any woman. As for the selection process, Garam explains that each candidate is injected with Jahad's blood. They're then made to compete with each other by climbing the tower, and whoever comes out on top will be worthy to become Jahad's wife. Garam then tells Bomb about the origin of the 13-month series. On the surface, they're status symbols for the Princesses of Jahad. There's also a rule stating that any princess who's able to acquire all 13 months would be allowed to become Jahad's wife. But if you didn't know it already, no princess in history has accomplished this yet. All that exposition is actually just a prologue for what Garam is about to reveal to Bomb. As she puts it, the true story behind the Princesses of Jahad is different. According to her, the first Princesses of Jahad got so consumed by the 13th month series' evil magic that they ended up eliminating one another. Garam also reveals that by the time she was selected as a princess, no one even cared about collecting the 13 months anymore. It was just all about the bloodshed. In the end, this whole rivalry among the princesses spilled over to the 10 great families, which turned out to become an ongoing feud with one another. As Garam tells it, learning about this was what initially made her want to leave the Order of Princesses and go into hiding. She then goes on to tell Bomb that a certain genius who had the potential to stop this battle royale eventually arrived in the past. Another princess named Anne Jahad. Anne came from the highest genetic stock, since she had the blood of 2 great family leaders in her veins. She also wielded the colorless December. According to Garam, Anne was so powerful that even the 10 great lords had no choice but to acknowledge her. But in the end, just as Anne was about to end the war between the princesses and 10 great families, she went insane. She then took out any Jahad family member that she encountered after that. In the end, Anne was trapped in a mysterious labyrinth. Now, Garam deeply admired Anne, so she went out to save Anne when she learned about her imprisonment. She eventually found Anne, who then proceeded to tell her about Jahad's secrets. Garam reveals that Jahad never intended to get married in the first place, and that the real reason he established the Order of Princesses was to get people pressuring him to have an heir off his back. More alarmingly, Grom tells Bomb that the whole battle royale among the princesses that's been going on this whole time was another ruse that Jahad created. It turns out that Anne confronted Jahad about this, but she just ended up learning more cruel secrets from the king of the tower. Grom then drops a bombshell on Bomb when she tells him that Jahad actually had a first love, a woman who goes by the name Arlene Grace. But the big reveal here is when Grom informs Bomb that Arlene is also the one who brought him into this world. Bomb recognizes that he's heard the name Arlene before and realizes that it's the place Fug took from him. On top of that, he recognizes that there's a connection between Arlene and him when Fug dubbed him with the name Jovial Grace. All of this leads Bomb to ask Grom about the big question, if Arlene is his mom. But here's the thing, Grom tells him that it's more complicated than that. And we hope you guys are ready for this, because Grom is about to drop more shocking revelations on Bomb. She starts by telling him that she's not sure about the exact details about Arlene and Bomb's biological connection, but what she's sure of is that Arlene played a crucial role in bringing him to the tower. Grom goes on to explain that Arlene was one of the irregulars who first climbed the tower with Jahad. As she puts it, there were originally 13 irregulars who made the climb. In fact, it explains why he created the 13-month series. It's so that each of his companions could share the key to the tower. Because if you remember, the 13-month series is made up of half of the key that could open the door past the 134th floor of the megastructure. In addition to that, Grom tells Bomb that there were originally supposed to be 12 lords, and even though she initially thought that Anne had just made all this up because of her insanity, Grom eventually found out that all of this was true when she went looking for Arlene's pocket deep within Jahad's vaults after Anne told her about it. Grom then tells Bomb that Arlene's pocket contains her diary. This diary contains a lot more revelations. For one, we find out that Arlene had the ability to use mysterious spells. More interestingly, Grom found out that Jahad had a crush on Arlene right from the beginning of their journey. However, Arlene already loves someone else, another hidden irregular that joined Jahad's journey named V. In fact, Grom even speculates that V might stand for Viol, which explains why Fug used it back when Bomb was a Slayer candidate. More importantly, it turns out that V used to be the boss of Luslik, who happens to be the current leader of Fug. Grom continues to tell Arlene's story and reveals that V and Arlene fell in love with each other during their journey. Eventually, Jahad decided to stop climbing the tower and become its king, but V and Arlene wanted to keep ascending the tower, so they criticized this decision. Still, Jahad pushed forth with his plan to make a deal with the administrator and ultimately rule over the tower. He then asked Arlene to marry him, but she was already engaged to V. As a result, V and Arlene ran away from Jahad and formed their own organization dedicated to stopping him. This then led to a war between Jahad and the two lovers in order to steal the key that Jahad had. Through many conflicts between the 10 leaders, eventually they sided with Jahad. V and Arlene then lost the war and became fugitives. During this period, Arlene got pregnant with V's child. Bomb starts to think that he's that kid, but Grom blows his bubble when she reveals that Arlene and V's child was assassinated by Jahad right after it was born. And he did it right in front of Arlene. Losing her child made Arlene spiral into madness, so much so that she attempted to end her life multiple times. But since she made a deal with the administrator to become immortal like Jahad and the rest of the 10 lords, Arlene just kept on living. Another big reveal happens when we find out from Grom that V was the only irregular that didn't make a deal for immortality. That's because he was able to take himself out when he got super depressed seeing his wife go insane. Before his demise, V told Arlene to forget everything, return to her companions, and live happily. But instead of doing that, Arlene decided to look for a way out of the tower. She also used her magic to preserve her infant child's body, and took several keepsakes from her late husband. Arlene eventually started to believe that there was a way that she could bring her child back to life. Grom then tells Bomb the exact words she found inside Arlene's pocket at the end of her diary. It's a prophecy that goes, "I have finally found a way to get out of this place. A place without Jahad or the administrator. I don't know where that place will be, but as long as I can see the vast sky and shining stars which are so much like my own home, it doesn't matter." But even as I was leaving this place, I could not let go of the longing for my love and pity for my dead child. So I decided to offer this child's body to the god on the outside. Someday that god's power will enter this dead child's body and awaken him again. That child will open the door to this tower and return someday. He shall achieve vengeance for my love and finish the war which we started with his own hands. He shall destroy corrupt power and bring truth to the tower. God's messengers shall place the red thorn in that child's hands, and that child shall use the red thorn to cut the throat of the greedy king. And he shall find the hidden key, open the door, and lead everyone on the tower to greater heights. Grom then points out that Bomb is the child referred to in Arlene's prophecy. As a matter of fact, Jahad and the 10 lords knew about this prophecy and did everything they could to erase all records of Bomb and Arlene from the tower. Grom's story ends with her telling Bomb that he was destined to come to this place. Somewhere else, Yura has finally released Rachel and Joaquin from her luggage. Kraka introduces himself to Joaquin as Fug's new slayer, which angers him. But he immediately changes his tune around Kraka when he reveals that he knows a way for Joaquin to become white again. So Kraka invites Joaquin to have a private talk. In the meantime, the rest of Team Rachel gets settled in their rooms. Rachel notices Wanyan staring at her. When she asks about it, Wanyan basically roasts Rachel before wondering why someone like Bomb would even follow her around. By the end of their conversation, Wanyan asks Rachel what she hopes to gain from all of this. In reply, she tells him something eerily similar to a prophecy we just heard, that all she wants is a blue sky, countless stars, and a cool breeze. Rachel then slips and mentions to Wanyan that this dream of hers is the same one that a certain person also wanted their whole life. But when Wanyan asks who Rachel's referring to, she keeps it a secret. Their talk ends and we find out that Rachel knows a lot about Arlene. In fact, Rachel wants to acquire the thorn to replace Baum as the child of prophecy. Meanwhile, Karaka informs Joaquin that there's another way for him to become white again that doesn't involve absorbing his clones. All he needs to do is collect enough souls and Joaquin will return to his original state. Karaka then tells him that there's a place on the floor of death called the Spirit Room, which is where he could eat up all the souls he wants and finally go back to his true form. While this is happening, Heljo has gathered his military commanders, namely Charlotte, Song, Sanchez the Piercer, Wilcott the Windy, and Fabregas the Bloody. They deliberate on Karaka's recent offer. Sanchez and Charlotte advise Heljo to refuse it, believing that Karaka is lying to them. On the other hand, Fabregas, Song, and Wilcott think it's worth taking the risk. After all, they could just take out Karaka if he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain. Regardless of their options, Heljo is only able to make a decision about the matter with the help of his greatest source of inspiration, comic books. That is to say, he ultimately decides to pit Bombs and his friends with Karaka's group. To do this, he tells his generals to send out a message throughout the floor of death telling everyone that whoever beats Heljo could claim the thorn. This is all a ruse to bait both Karaka and Bomb to come to South City so that Heljo and his generals could ambush them. Somewhere else, Yuri and her group finally arrive at Hwaryun's location, a place called Gallstone Village. Hwaryun then relieves the girl and tells her that she'll take it up from here, as she informs the group that she has something to tell them about Heljo. Oh, and we even finally got a name for the other red-haired guide, Ai. Meanwhile, Grom checks up on Bomb after everything he just heard. He's still processing it, but Grom reminds him about how it felt like he was coming back home when he first stepped foot on the floor of death. Another big revelation comes when Grom tells Bomb that he felt that way because this is the same floor where Arlene gave birth and raised him. She goes on to tell Bomb that Jahad also built a temple here, since he was so obsessed with Arlene. But as Grom puts it, this was when Enryu appeared and turned the tower's Shinsu red as if punishment for Jahad's defilement of the land. Curiously, Garam refers to Enryu as the messenger of God who came to deliver Bomb the thorn. Garam goes on to speculate that Enryu's appearance was due to how Jahad had attempted to erase all memory of Bomb from the entire tower. And we're not exaggerating when we say that Enryu was an absolute menace. As Garam puts it, the first thing that Enryu told the citizens of the 42nd floor was that only those who believed in the false king would remain here and face death. Knowing that he was serious, a majority of this floor's population migrated to other parts of the tower. But there were those who remained and chose to face Enryu, particularly the hardcore zealots who worshipped Jahad. Suffice it to say that they tried to subdue Enryu with an army but were only met by a rain of red Shinsu spears in response. Afterwards, the administrator of the floor confronted the irregular, but Enryu just tore it apart. In fact, this event was so cataclysmic primarily due to how people used to believe that the administrators were indestructible beings that no one could stand against. In the aftermath of their battle, all of the mountains, seas, and buildings on the 42nd floor were destroyed and its ground turned red. Then it rained Shinsu all over the place for ages after that. As Grom tells it, this was when the 42nd floor truly became known as the Floor of Death. Eventually, rumors about a divine thorn that could take out Jahad started to spread throughout the tower. News of this reached Fug, who then decided to look for this rumored weapon, all the while searching for a suitable candidate to wield it. That candidate ended up becoming Bomb, since Fug believed that he was Arlene's biological child. Realizing this leads Bomb to wonder if all that's happened to him was just part of his destiny. Back at Yuri's group, Hwaryun explains that she used a path to get to the Floor of Death that was exclusively available to Red Witches, the tribe where she belongs. Hwaryun then admits to Yuri that aside from protecting Bomb, she wants the princess to take out Heljo because of a personal grudge she has with him. Hwaryun approaches a stone coffin in the middle of the room and explains how Red Witches are required to go to the Floor of Death as part of their pilgrimage. But here's the thing, this floor nullifies a Red Witch's ability to see the future. Hwaryun then goes on to tell how the Floor of Death's surviving inhabitants had to hide out within the administrator's body in order to keep themselves hidden from Jahad's forces, who had since started taking out any inhabitant they saw in order to stop rumors about Enryu from spreading. Again, there was one problem with this. Staying underground meant that the inhabitants of the floor were bound to age and eventually perish. On the other hand, venturing above meant they would become Jahad's targets. Eventually, a couple of high rankers who ruled over the floor, Desa and Dajaw, decided to use their magic to create the Spirit Room, a place where they stored the souls of the Floor of Death's inhabitants in order to prevent them from aging. This then allowed the floor's citizens to gain eternal life, but they could no longer leave the Floor of Death. From there, the inhabitants pretty much self-policed themselves to avoid Jahad's men from discovering them. But as we already know, Heljo eventually rose to power and replaced Desa, all in hopes of leaving the Floor of Death. This led Heljo to work with Fug and look for the Thorn Fragment. In the middle of this, we discover Hwaryun's grudge is all about getting revenge for another Red Witch that Heljo trapped and ultimately took out. According to Hwaryun, this Red Witch was the other red-haired girl's predecessor. She was captured by Heljo and forced to look for the Thorn Fragment. When she refused, Heljo stole her vitality and she cruelly died. Hwaryun adds that this act prevented this Red Witch from fulfilling her own destiny. All of a sudden, the group hears Heljo's announcement inviting them to South City. The same happens at Bomb's location and Team Rachel's room as well. After this, Hwaryun tells Yuri's group that it's probably a trap, but it doesn't matter, since Yuri has agreed to deal with him anyway. Meanwhile, Garam explains Heljo's origins to Bomb and convinces the boy to let his friends handle him. Garam then catches on to the fact that Heljo is lying, as she gives Bomb the reveal that the last Thorn fragment is actually in North City. Particularly, he could find the artifact at the heart of the Spirit Room. What's more is that Grand Jah, the old ruler of North City, is actually guarding the Spirit Room after he retired. An interesting point to note too, is that Jah is one of the remaining people on the Floor of Death who saw Enryu in person. Garam then tells Bomb that Jah will test him once they meet each other. If he passes, then it would mean he's worthy of acquiring the Thorn fragment. All of a sudden, Hockney has a vision. In the meantime, Garam tells Bomb that there's no shame in it if he doesn't want to push through with this, but the boy's mind is set. He tries to bid Hockney and Mata farewell, but Hockney now insists on joining Bomb, thinking that this is where his recent vision is leading him. Not wanting to be left out, Mata also commits to helping Bomb and the three heroes embark on their journey. Somewhere else, at the entrance to Heljo's castle, Wilcott gripes about being put on guard duty. He suddenly spots Yuri and Evan walking towards him, which prompts Wilcott to transform and attack the princess. Nearby, Heljo's other military commanders, Sanchez and Charlotte, hang in the sidelines. They're too late to evade it when Sachi ambushes them with his vines. At the same time, Kun and the rest of the group wait for Yuri's signal, which will notify them to storm Heljo's castle. We then go to a flashback where we find out from Hwaryun that she specifically chose Yuri to deal with Heljo because of the 13 months. She goes on to explain that the immortality that the people of the 42nd floor possess is worlds apart from what Jahad and the Ten Lords have. You see, the King of the Tower and his companions have what you might call full immortality. That is, it's a quality granted to them by the Administrator. On the other hand, Heljo and the Floor of Death's inhabitants are only immortal because of a magical spell placed on them. As Hwaryun puts it, there are 3 rules to any magic spell. 1. You cannot violate the rules of a spell once they're set. 2. You must receive help from a powerful medium or divine being to activate or remove a spell. Finally, the rank of a spell is determined by the power of the being or medium that cast it. As such, some spells can be destroyed or neutralized by higher ranking spells. Given that each of the 13 months is pretty much the ultimate spell item, any one of them could break the immortality spell cast on Heljo and his men. When Yuri does this, their ranks would surely fall into chaos. In the present, Heljo's generals prepare themselves for a siege. In the meantime, we find out that Yuri has actually been hiding a big secret. She's never ignited either of her 13th month series weapons. We even find out that the only reason people think she was already able to properly ignite her weapons was because she lied to one of her sisters in the Order. Evan then overheard the lie and started spreading it to everyone else. Meanwhile, Wilcott activates his full power and gets ready to lunge at Yuri. In turn, Yuri goes for broke and summons both Green April and Black March. She focuses, and remarkably, Yuri manages to ignite both weapons. The ignited forms of Green April and Black March show them their true forms, and they're as equally surprised that they've been ignited. In fact, they start to wonder if an event they simply refer to as that day has come. Specifically, the 2 ignited weapons are referring to the battle royale that the princesses engage in, all thanks to the curse that Jahad placed in the 13-month series. As for that day, Green April reveals that it's the event in which the 13 months true master would appear and make them one again. Black March then tells Yuri that even though it's not that day, she and Green April are going to help her out of courtesy for her talents. That is to say, it's a perk that Yuri gets because she's one of the rare princesses who has gathered 2 of the 13-month series. However, Black March tells her that she can only ignite one of them or risk going insane. But if you know Yuri, you also know that she plays by her own rules, so she tells the 2 weapons that she wants to ignite them both. Green April tries to convince her not to do this, because she'd definitely lose her mind if she did. But Yuri thinks that it would be super duper cool if she got to command both of them. Black March realizes that there's no way to stop Yuri, so she just tells Green April to go with it. Still, Green April has her reservations, telling Black March that this could end up becoming a repeat of Yuram Jahad. We then find out that this conversation between Yuri and the weapons can't be seen from the outside, as Wilcott notices that the princess is just floating in front of him. So Wilcott finally makes a move, which forces Evan to jump in and use his Frogfisher destructive urge to protect Yuri. Meanwhile, Green April asks the princess again to choose which one of them she wants to ignite, but her answer remains the same. In the end, Yuri gets her way, as the 2 13-month weapons agree to ignite simultaneously. Wilcott notices an enormous power pouring out of Yuri, as the princess finally ignites her 13-month weapons. While this is happening, Garam parts ways with her visitors. She hands Bomb Arlene's old pocket before saying their goodbyes. With Garam left alone, she can't help but feel guilty that she didn't tell him a certain story that he needed to know. Garam thinks that Bomb might resent her later on, but he has more pressing matters to attend to at the moment. That's because we find out from Garam that Jah isn't actually guarding the spirit room out of his own accord. He's actually gone insane, since he's been imprisoned there for so long. Still, Garam thinks that if Bomb really is the one from Arlene's prophecies, then he'll show everyone a miracle. Later, Garam talks to someone on her pocket and informs them about the talk she had with Bomb. On the other hand, she's surprised when the person on the other end of the line tells her that Yuri has ignited 2 over 13 months. Back on the battlefield, everyone can sense the energy coming from Yuri. Evan tries to call for her but immediately realizes that the princess has entered a flow state. She then waves her weapons and it causes a devastating energy surge that destroys everything along its path. Evan tries to use his Frog Fisher's appetite ability to prevent himself from being caught up by Yuri's attack. It works, but he still ends up with a wounded right arm in the process. Wilcott, on the other hand, has his entire right side blown off. In fact, he would have been completely obliterated if it wasn't for Evan using the appetite ability to reduce the power of Yuri's attack just now. Wilcott realizes he's no match for Yuri, so he tries to escape. All of a sudden, Sanchez tries to step to the princess and blast her with an energy ball, but Yuri easily blocks it with Black March and even throws it back at Sanchez. Then Wilcott tries to backstab Yuri, which is a super bad move. That's because Wilcott ends up getting popped like a pimple the moment Yuri touches him with Black March. The dust settles and Sanchez can't believe that Yuri has taken out his fellow general. And even though Yuri is in a flow state right now, of course she doesn't miss this opportunity to talk some trash at her opponents. Not far away, Helljoe receives word that Wilcott has bitten the dust. This makes Helljoe realize that Yuri is the person that Karaka told him about, the one who would be able to help him escape from the floor of death. Somewhere else, we find Bomb, Hockney, and Mata treading the passage inside Grand Dajah's castle. They then come across a couple of giant lizards, which Mata is able to drive away. As they continue their trek, Bomb finds out that Hockney has no memories of his past. As we hear from Hockney, he does have spotty memories of his past, but there are gaping holes in it. For one, he doesn't know how he initially lost his memories, only that Mata found him afterwards and filled him in with certain details about his life. Hockney reveals that all he knows is that Helljoe is hunting him and that for some reason, part of his soul was absorbed by his painting, Red Light. It's actually because of this that Hockney was able to leave the floor of death in the first place. Hockney then goes on to tell Bomb that Helljoe found out about what happened to his soul, so he ordered Hockney to do the same for him. But Hockney refused, which angered Helljoe. And in revenge, Helljoe sold Red Light to the outside world. Funnily enough, when Bomb asks Hockney why he wouldn't paint Helljoe, he tells him that he just doesn't feel like painting when someone forces him to do it. On a more serious note, Hockney lets us know that even he hasn't seen Red Light in its complete version, since it was already gone by the time he reawakened after losing his memories. Still, Hockney can't shake off the feeling that he's lost something, which is why he's so determined to complete Red Light once again. We then discover that Hockney's eyes are so special because they have the ability to see the present and future simultaneously. In a nutshell, Hockney has the ability to see a few seconds into the future. Hockney actually thinks that his eyes are a curse, especially when he relays a story about a certain girl he climbed the tower with in the past. At the time, this teammate of his requested her portrait to be painted, and Hockney agreed. But the moment he started drawing her, his eyes showed him how the girl would meet her end. As he expected, the girl was suddenly taken out by a needle to the neck a few seconds after Hockney saw his vision. To make matters worse, Hockney even found out that his teammates, even the girl, were actually planning on assassinating him and looting his gear. The only reason he survived was because he shouted at the girl when he saw the vision, which made them miss their mark and hit the girl instead. Regardless, Hockney tells Bomb that he still would have preferred to only see the present with his eyes. To him, all that matters is the moment. After listening to all this, Bomb volunteers to help Hockney find Red Light after they deal with Dajah. He even goes on to say that his friends would help Hockney once they learn about his predicament. Shortly after, the three guys reach the entrance to Dajah's castle. Bomb immediately senses the thorn fragment on the other side of the room. Unknown to the trio, a guardian had already sensed their presence. Mata gets cold feet just as they're about to enter the castle. To his credit, he does admit that he's terrified. Bomb knows how dangerous this mission is, so he agrees with Mata's decision to stay behind in spite of Hockney's protests. But their conversation is cut short when Rachel suddenly appears and tells Bomb to forget about obtaining the thorn fragment. We then move to a flashback from half an hour ago where we find out that Song has led Karaka, Joaquin, and the rest of Rachel's companions to a secret passage leading to the spirit room. In another flashback from an hour ago, we see Joaquin and Karaka hearing Helljoe's announcement about the thorn fragment. Karaka knows that Helljoe is lying but doesn't share this information with Joaquin. Instead, he tells him to focus on becoming white again. They then head for their journey, and we find out that Karaka has his own plans. According to him, he's going to take over everyone's souls in the middle of all the fighting that would soon ensue. In the meantime, we find out that Rachel has just received a message from Emily informing her that Bomb and Hockney are already on their way to the spirit room. Like an idiot, she starts to panic and pressures Yura to go with her and locate their targets. In fact, all her ranting ends up with Joaquin overhearing this, which just gets him all the more excited to go to the spirit room. That's because not only would he be able to become white again, but he'd be hitting two birds with one stone by taking out Bomb. Karaka wonders how Rachel discovered Bomb's location, so he makes a deal with her. He'll help her team get to the spirit room in exchange for Bomb's location. Rachel ends up agreeing to this deal. We then go to another flashback, this time from just 10 minutes ago, where we see Song leading Karaka and the rest of Team Rachel through the secret passage. Rachel desperately thinks of a plan to save her bacon, knowing that she'll be in big trouble if Karaka captures Bomb after he finds the Thorn Fragment. In the end, Rachel relies on the Emily app to pinpoint Bomb and Hockney's location. On the other hand, Karaka thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to grab the Thorn and Bomb at the same time. Rachel then receives a ping from Emily soon after. She gives Yura a signal and the former pop star covers for Rachel. She tells the rest of the group that Rachel twisted her ankle, so it would be best to secure her inside Yura's luggage for now. The rest of the group don't really care, so they pretty much tell Yura to do whatever she has to. But there is someone who actually has their eye on the freckled weasel, Wanyan. In fact, he's the first person to catch on that Yura has not sent Rachel to her luggage and instead let her run off in another direction. In the present, Rachel tries to order Bomb to run away before Karaka reaches him and steals his Thorn Fragment. Mata and Hockney hear about this and remember that the Thorn Fragment is the same thing that Helljo has been looking for. On the other hand, we finally witness Bomb showing us that he's not pig-whipped anymore when he instantly suspects that Rachel is telling him to run away not because she's concerned about him, but because she just doesn't want Karaka to get the thorn instead of her. For a moment, Bomb wonders if his relationship with Rachel would go back to the way it was if he chooses to obey her right now. But like we said, our boy has grown up a lot and now knows better than to be tempted by her. In the end, he tells Rachel that he's going to do what he came here for. Bomb hops on his Shinsu platform and whisks away Mata and Hockney to make sure they don't get captured by their enemies. Rachel then hops on her lighthouse and forces herself onto Bomb's platform. Like the entitled brat that she is, she then pressures Bomb to tell her about what Garam told him. Credit to our boy though, because he entertains Rachel's tantrum and informs her about Arlene Grace. He goes on to say how he found out that Arlene ventured outside the tower believing that it's a place similar to paradise. But considering that he and Rachel came from that place as well, Bomb tells her that he's also now aware that it's not paradise. When Rachel lashes out and asks Bomb what he knows about it, he admits that it's not as much as what Rachel knows. But Bomb is sure that Rachel despises the place they came from. On the other hand, Bomb also realizes that the only reason he thought that it was like paradise was because he was so in love with Rachel back then. Bomb then decides he's done talking with Rachel. So he simply tells her that he's going to continue his mission and find a real paradise where everyone in the tower could live happily. And in a badass moment, Bomb pretty much declares war on Jahad, Fug, and the 10 great families when he says that they'll be his enemies if they get in his way. Unsurprisingly, Rachel gets all bitter that Bomb won't listen to her anymore. In fact, she shows just how toxic she is when she starts berating our boy. Not only that, but we witness just how much of an entitled brat she is when she claims that Bomb's destiny is supposed to be hers. In turn, Bomb listens to all this and shows he's matured enough to not engage with an unhinged scumbag like Rachel, so he simply bids her farewell. Later, he and his new friends arrive inside Jahad's castle. Mata and Hockney check up on him and see that Bomb is desperately trying to stop himself from bawling after the encounter he had with Rachel. There's no time for that though, because they just arrived inside Dajah's room where he's accompanied by North City's current ruler, Grand Dali. Bomb tells Dajah that they came here searching for the thorn, but the old ruler is more interested in Hockney. That's because Dajah immediately recognizes Hockney's eyes and calls it his own. Dajah then turns to his successor and asks Dajah why he wasn't informed that his eyes were going to be brought to him. On top of that, we find out that Dajah believes his eyes would bring them a savior. Afterwards, Dajah deems Bomb worthy of taking the test that would reveal the location of the thorn fragment to him. In the meantime, Hockney is absolutely puzzled by what Dajah meant when he referred to his eyes, but he doesn't get an answer because they discover that Rachel has followed them. And now she's even imposing on Dajah to let her take the test. Rachel then turns on scumbag mode and starts having another tantrum, this time going so far as to call Bomb a thief who stole her birthright. But Dajah is no fool. He can sense how evil she is, so he refuses to let her take the test. In turn, Bomb steps in and actually does Rachel a solid by pleading with Dajah to allow her to participate. And showing just how much of a deplorable sack of garbage she is, Rachel suspects Bomb is up to something instead of just thanking the guy who just literally got her a free pass to take the test. In the end, Dajah gives in and says that Rachel wouldn't be able to pass the test if she's not the true owner of the thorn anyway. He then lays out what this challenge entails, and it's pretty simple. He wants Bomb and Rachel to punish Helljo and rescue Dasa, who happens to be Dajah's brother. While all this is happening, we discover that Karaka has caught on to Yura and Rachel's charade. He demands Yura to tell him where he could find Bomb, or else he's going to hurt her and the rest of her team. Back inside Dajah's room, Bomb thinks that Dajah is just using them to help him with his own problems. On the other hand, Rachel starts to feel the pressure of the task, knowing that Helljo is a powerful warrior with an army of immortals at his beck and call. Dajah then informs the two that someone who he believes to be connected to their savior has appeared to thrash Helljo's castle, and it's none other than Yuri. Bomb recognizes the princess, while Dajah expresses how hyped he is that there are people who would defeat Helljo for him and rescue his brother. Dajah then retreats to his private quarters, while Dali invites Bomb and Rachel for another debriefing. In the meantime, Bomb notices that there's something strange about Yuri. Back at Cell City, Sachi informs Kun that he and I have successfully infiltrated Helljo's castle and that his minions are now in a state of panic after witnessing Yuri eliminate Wilcott. With that, Hwaryun instructs Endorsi to summon Bongbong so that they could follow suit. At the same time, Sachi and I continue to make their way deeper into the castle, as she informs him about a switch that would lead him to a secret passage where they could find Dasa. They eventually reach it only to discover that it's guarded by Heljo's men. Not too far away, Kun's group has just teleported inside the castle where they're ambushed by guards. Kun uses Enakor to trap them in the Mystery Sphere before continuing their journey. Back at Daja's castle, Dali takes Bomb and Rachel to another room where he profusely apologizes to them for Daja's behavior. He then mistakenly assumes that Bomb and Rachel are regulars and apologizes again for not being able to tell them the location of the thorn himself. That's because, according to Dali, Daja didn't share this information with him when he retired from being North City's ruler. Bomb then asks Rachel what she's planning to do now. She tells him that she has no other choice but to get on with the test. Bomb shares the same sentiment. He then turns to Dali and asks him why they wouldn't just deal with Heljo by themselves, considering that they seem like they have the power to do so. In reply, Dali reveals that it's because Heljo has a monster on his side, a creature that has the ability to devour mortals in order for it to grow. Meanwhile, more panic ensues inside Heljo's castle, as hordes of guards try to desert their posts. In fact, even one of Heljo's generals, Fabregas, has chosen to escape this place. But before he could do this, Heljo appears in front of him and accuses Fabregas of desertion. In the end, the pressure gets to Fabregas, so he transforms and attacks his boss. Heljo counters by transforming as well and maiming Fabregas in one fell swoop. We then find out that Heljo's transformation is all thanks to the same monster that Dali has just told Bomb and Rachel about. It's a creature called the Red Thrissa, a powerful monster on the same level as a divine sea fish. It has the ability to cancel the immortality spell placed on anyone from the floor of death with a single bite. Not only that, but this beast also absorbs its victim's power. As it turns out, Heljo found this beast while he was still a hull repairman and took it in as his own. Back inside his throne room, Heljo has conclusively disciplined Fabregas and tells him to bring the intruders to him in exchange for returning his powers. Meanwhile, Dali tells Bomb and Rachel that Daja believes the true owner of the thorn could easily defeat someone like Heljo, which is why he assigned this task to the two. While this is happening, Kraka threatens that he'll use his abilities as a scout on Yura if she doesn't tell him where Bomb is. Wanyan watches this unfold and comes to the decision that he should stop Kraka from learning about Bomb's location. So he gets ready to take out one of his Shinsu bombs while the Fug Slayer is about to dig into Yura's mind. But just as Wanyan is about to hurl his Shinsu bomb, everyone inside the secret passage hears a voice telling Kraka that it's not right to hurt a hottie like Yura. The ceiling nearby then caves in to reveal that none other than Yurik has arrived on the scene. And according to Yurik, he just came here when he heard the damsel in distress shouting. Wanyan panics right after, as Yurik recognizes him as Bomb's old friend. Kraka notices this and wonders who this newcomer is. On the other hand, Joaquin vaguely remembers Yurik, but he's more concerned about how he can't sense the guy's power levels. We then get a flashback from 30 minutes ago where we find out that the reason no one inside the room could gauge Yurik's power was because Yuji made him wear a silver anklet that would mask his true abilities. When he wears this, it would appear that he's weaker than an average ranker. However, Yuji warns Yurik that even using as little as 5% of his power would break the anklet, so he really has to be careful while he's out on the floor of death. A more interesting reveal is when we find out that Yurik and Garam are actually a couple, as Yuji informs her that Wohaik Song's boss requested Yurik to make sure not to break the anklet or else Garam would break up with him. In the present, Yurik gets right to business. He tells Kraka and Joaquin that 5% would be more than enough to beat their butts. Realizing the threat in front of them, Kraka unleashes World of Darkness, Black Goral's Horn Whip, to try and stop Yurik. But the powerful Irregular just brushes it off and actually makes him realize that he doesn't even need to use 5% of his power for these scrubs. All he needs is a single percent of effort to take them down. So Yurik tells his opponents that he's going to give them a handicap by using a single finger to defeat them. Kraka gets all aggressive because of this and lunges at Yurik. In response, Yurik launches himself forward, while Joaquin notices on the sidelines that Wanyan and Misang have been covered in a protective barrier. Yurik clashes with Kraka and blasts him with energy from his finger, an attack so powerful that it causes a massive explosion in the secret passage. Back at North City, Dali tells Bomb and Rachel that they could take a secret portal leading them directly to Heljo's castle once they're ready to leave. Rachel asks Dali if he has any idea about Heljo's weakness, but he doesn't. However, Dali suggests that there might be a way for them to take out Heljo if Bomb and Rachel manage to rescue Dasa and borrow the power of Daja's eyes. Dali then reveals that Daja and Dasa got these mysterious eyes back when they first saw Enryu in the flesh. In fact, it was instrumental in driving out Heljo in the past, back when he tried to lay siege to South City before his rise to power. Bomb then puts two and two together, realizing that Hockney's eyes are Daja's. Back inside Daja's room, Hockney asks the old ruler of North City about his eyes. We then get more detail about Hockney's origins from Daja, as he tells him what exactly happened in the past. It turns out that Hockney lost his own eyes back then. When this happened, Mata brought Hockney to Daja and begged the old man to heal him. But Daja didn't have the power to restore Hockney's old eyes, so he instead gave his own pair of peepers to Hockney in exchange for a favor, to bring Daja their savior, which ultimately turned out to be Bomb. We also find out that Daja instructed Hockney to bring Garam to him. As for Hockney, he only has a faint recollection of that message about Garam, but the rest of it is hazy. He then asks Jahad what really happened to his original eyes, to which the old man reveals that Hell-Jo took them. As Jahad tells him, Hell-Jo plucked out Hockney's eyes when he refused to help the tyrant find the Thorn Fragment. Hell-Jo then tried to use Hockney's eyes to search for the Thorn Fragment but failed. Afterwards, Mata brought Hockney to Jahad, and that's when he got the old man's future-seeing eyes. Shortly after, Hockney confronts his old friend Mata about these revelations. Mata then gives us more details about their life on the floor of death in the past. It's revealed that he and Hockney used to work for Hell-Jo. During that time, Hell-Jo tasked both of them to search for the Thorn Fragment. They grew close during this period, and the two eventually found the thorn they were assigned to look for. According to Mata, Hockney suddenly started acting strange right when he saw the thorn. In addition to that, it was at this point that Hockney told Mata about how his painting, Red Light, contained his soul. After that, Hockney informed Hell-Jo that he didn't want to help him anymore, and this was when he plucked out Hockney's eyes and stole Red Light from him. Mata then goes on to say that even Jahad was surprised when he brought Hockney to him, since the old man discovered that the boy could now leave the floor of death. That's when Jahad proposed his deal with Hockney. And as we find out here, Mata didn't know the details of this deal, since Jahad talked to Hockney in private back then. In any case, Hockney accepted the deal and got Jahad's eyes in exchange for doing him a favor. Hockney then collapsed and lost consciousness for a few days. When he woke up, he could hardly remember his past. In fact, he couldn't even remember the deal he made with the old man. At the time, Mata thought that it would be better for Hockney to just get out of the floor of death so that his friend could live life the way he wanted to. So Mata helped Hockney escape. After listening to all this, Hockney thanks Mata for being such a solid bro. However, he reiterates that he really has to find Red Light, since losing it has made him feel like there's a gaping hole in his heart. And with that, he tells his old friend that he'll be going to South City to get his eyes back from Hell-Jo and retrieve his painting. In the other room, Dali has just relayed the same story to Bomb and Rachel. Bomb tells Rachel that even though Hockney can use his eyes to help them, they shouldn't get him involved in such a dangerous mission like this. Rachel disagrees, as she wants to use him for the mission as she has the final painting for Hockney's Red Light. Moments later, Hockney arrives and volunteers to join the two on their quest. Mata soon follows and does the same. Afterwards, Dali assigns Bomb to regroup with Yuri and distract Hell-Jo. On the other hand, he and Rachel would enter the castle and rescue Jahad. With everything set, Dali opens the portal to South City as their party prepares to leave. Meanwhile, at South City, Hell-Jo steps out of his castle to witness Yuri absolutely humiliating Sanchez in the middle of the battlefield. He then decides that Yuri is a suitable challenger for him. At the same time, Rachel tries to act like she's hot stuff when she reminds Bomb that they're enemies in spite of the fact that they have to work together. Bomb agrees with the sentiment, which leaves her butthurt that she doesn't have him by the palm of her hand anymore. Back at South City, Hell-Jo catches Yuri's attention and asks her to make a deal with him. His proposal involves the princess using her powers to break the curse of immortality on Hell-Jo and his people. In exchange, Hell-Jo promises that he'd give Yuri anything she wants, since he plans on becoming king of the tower once he leaves this floor. On the other hand, Hell-Jo threatens Yuri that he'll defeat her and steal her powers if she refuses it. But Yuri doesn't accept the deal, telling Hell-Jo that he's not the king that she's been waiting for. All of a sudden, Garam appears right behind Yuri and attacks her, referring to the younger princess as the ghost of the 13 months. Somewhere else, we find that Wanyan and the rest of his companions have survived Yurik's devastating attack relatively unscathed. Karaka, on the other hand, has had his body absolutely shredded after taking Yurik's technique. However, the Fug Slayer is able to regenerate his body shortly after that. Karaka then finally realizes that he's dealing with the Yurik Mizuno. And to his credit, Karaka knows that he doesn't stand a chance against the self-proclaimed champion of the tower. Karaka then accepts the fact that he wouldn't be able to grab Bomb today. On top of that, he thinks he has one last card up his sleeve, turning Joaquin back into white. So he decides to go on a tactical retreat for now and focus on restoring Joaquin to his original self. To do this, Karaka splits his energy. As he puts it, he'll leave just enough power to allow him to return to his original body, while the rest of it is used to trigger his self-destruct ability. Karaka then separates his head from his body and zooms past Wanyan. In turn, Wanyan notices Karaka's head biting down on his ring, the one that looks exactly the same as Wanyan's. Karaka's body then turns into black orb and explodes in the middle of the passage. It doesn't do anything to anyone, since Yurik is able to protect himself and the other regulars from the blast. The dust settles and Wanyan asks what Yurik is doing on the floor of death. He assumes that the Wohaik Song's captain is out here to look for Bomb, but Yurik clarifies that his main mission out here is about something else. We then get the reveal that Hell-Jo didn't actually discover the Red Tharissa by himself. Yurik gave the creature to him after he noticed Hell-Jo's potential. But since Hell-Jo has become a tyrant, he aims to take the Red Tharissa away from the guy. Oh, and he pretty much makes it known that he's doing this for Garam. Yurik then bids them farewell. Meanwhile, we see that Bomb, Rachel, and the rest of their group have arrived in Hell-Jo's castle. Farega spots Dali and attempts to attack him so that he could bring North City's current ruler to Hell-Jo. He even tries to attack Mata with his poison tail, but Bomb protects his new ally with a Shinsu black hole sphere. To everyone's shock, Bomb is able to end Fabregas's life, in spite of the fact that he was an immortal. As for Dali, well, suffice it to say he is in awe after seeing the power of the Savior in action. Dali in particular is super hyped about learning this and starts begging Bomb to help save Jahad from his prison. On the other hand, Rachel gets suspicious of Dali, as she wonders why he's much more focused on rescuing Jahad than having Bomb take out Hell-Jo. Somewhere else, Hworyun informs Kun and the rest of their group that they're almost at Dasa's prison. Kun starts to think that Hworyun is lying to them, since she's prioritizing Dasa over getting her revenge on Heljo. While this is all happening, we see Bomb hopping onto one of Heljo's castle's window ledges to use it as a shortcut that would lead them to Dasa's prison. However, he spots Garam and Yuri fighting each other in the distance, so he decides to head over there first instead. However, Hockney informs him that it's too dangerous to use a Shinsu to fly to that location, since Heljo controls the Shinsu in South City. Mata instead proposes that they capture one of Heljo's giant winged leech monsters and use it to ferry them over there. At the same time, Garam and Yuri are duking it out in the skies above South City. We discover that Garam has been addressing the ghost of 13 months that have currently taken over Yuri's body. The ghost recognizes Garam as Yuram Jahad's younger sister. In the meantime, Sanchez tries to backstab Yuri, but Evan jumps in with Shinsu control skill, incandescent bomb to stop him from interrupting the princesses. Evan then turns and wonders what happened to the princess. Meanwhile, we find out from Garam that her sister, Yuram, was one of the other Jahad princesses who went insane after igniting two 13-month series weapons in the past. Tragically, Garam had to take out Yuram after this, and we also discover that they're twins, with Yuram being the older of the two. We then discover from Garam that the ghost of the 13 months has made a deal with Jahad, and it's here we find out that the ghost is actually the soul of someone who failed Jahad's initial princess selection. This person resented the other Jahad princesses who got chosen, so she made a deal with Jahad to seep into the 13 months and torment the princesses. She does this by possessing the body of any princess who ignites more than one 13-month weapon. On the other hand, Jahad fulfilled his end of this deal by telling everybody that the princesses who actually got possessed by these spirits just went nuts. This then allowed him to prevent any one of the 13 princesses from gathering all of the 13-month series. Yuri then tells Garam to buzz off, and we find out that the ghost could only possess a princess's body for a week. But Garam doesn't want to take that chance, so she whips out an artifact called the Bell of Dawn. Garam then orders her sidekick, Kranka, to reveal himself and take Yuri by surprise. Kranka comes up clutch as he hurls a piece of black cloth that wraps around Yuri. Garam then explains that this cloth is another magical tool used by sorcerers to trap evil beings. With Yuri subdued, Garam rings the Bell of Dawn, all the while dumping exposition about how it used to belong to Arlene Grace and its power to drive evil spirits away. The Bell of Dawn starts to work its magic on Yuri. Evan tries to help his boss, but Garam easily throws him back. However, the Bell of Dawn's magic is cut short when Heljo intervenes and frees the possessed princess from the cloth. You see, Heljo thinks that Garam is trying to destroy his only ticket out of the floor of death, which is why he chose to align himself with Yuri. Heljo then offers Yuri to team up again, but the princess just sends him away with a swish of green April. All of a sudden, Bomb, Hockney, and Mata arrive on the scene. Bomb heads straight for Yuri, and Garam notices that she's come back to her senses when Yuri recognizes Bomb. In the meantime, Heljo gets super offended that everybody keeps ignoring him, as he spouts threats while he transforms into his red Thrissa form. Somewhere else, we find out that Yurik has linked up with Wanyan and the rest of Team Rachel to head over to South City. Yurik reveals that Heljo might actually be invincible because of the red Thrissa. That's because the red Thrissa isn't just an ordinary monster, it was actually born from the body of the administrator that Enryu took out in the past, effectively making it the administrator's child. Back at South City, Bomb, Garam, and the others witness Heljo's transformation and sense his power levels increase. Garam then hands Bomb the magic cloth to wrap Yuri so that she could properly recover from being possessed. At that moment, Heljo releases a technique called Heljo Weak Beam to blast his enemies. Meanwhile, Yurik continues to tell the story about the red Thrissa. As he puts it, Yurik doesn't know much about whether administrators could reproduce, but he believes that the red Thrissa is the fallen administrator of the 42nd floor's attempt at being reborn. Regardless, we find out that Yurik first came across it the last time he went to the floor of death. He defeated this beast and ultimately decided that the red Thrissa could be a force for good if he gave it to someone who could use its abilities properly. At the time, Yurik had met Heljo and saw that he could be this guy, so he decided to give him the red Thrissa. Yurik then reveals to Wanyan and the others that he plans on asking Heljo why he turned into a tyrant after all this time. Deep inside Heljo's castle, Kun confronts Hworyun and accuses her of lying to the rest of the group. Kun then breaks down his points, which basically boils down to Hworyun using the whole team to meet Dasa. In response, Hworyun comes clean and even applauds Kun for getting so close to the truth. She explains that she was telling the truth about the guide that Heljo took out in the past. More importantly, she informs everyone that her primary mission, to guide Bomb, has not changed at all. She then reveals that the reason she's so eager to meet Dasa is to grab a powerful item from him, an artifact called the Soul Stirring Ladle. This ladle has the power to scoop up souls, merge them with bodies, and is actually the only object capable of scooping up the souls inside the spirit room. Hworyun goes on to reveal that Heljo thinks that the Soul Stirring Ladle has been broken for a long time now, but Hworyun recently found out from Ai that Dasa still had it. Ultimately, Hworyun wants to get her hands on the Soul Stirring Ladle so that she could trade it with Madarako. If you guys remember the workshop battle arc, Madarako is a powerful figure from the Merchant Guild who had worked with Fug but has since lost favor with the organization. In fact, it was Madarako who delivered Fug its first Thorn Fragment. Now, there are rumors that Madarako still has another Thorn Fragment with him. On top of that, Madarako has been looking for the Soul Stirring Ladle for a long time now, As such, Horion plans on exchanging this artifact for Madarako's thorn. After listening to all this, Kun puts all the pieces together and realizes that Horion has been using Yuri as her bait. Unknown to them, Dali and Rachel have been listening in on this entire conversation with her lighthouse. Just below them, Horion asks the rest of the group if they'd rather go help her look for the ladle, or if they want to blow this whole thing up by telling Yuri about her secret plan. Their conversation is cut short, however, when Dali bursts into the room from the ceiling and accuses them of trying to steal Dasa's ladle. Outside, Heljo grandstands only to realize that his opponents are nowhere to be found. That's because Bam, Garam, Yuri, and the others have chosen to retreat atop the giant flying leech. Garam finds out about Bam's mission and can't believe that Daja would use him like that. We then find out that Yuri has fully recovered, and Garam tells him to escape to North City while she faces Heljo. But Bam and Yuri are determined to reunite with their friends who are still stuck inside Heljo's castle. In the middle of their conversation, Evan recognizes Garam as none other than Garam Jahad, one of the princesses. Mada and Hockney then approach Bam and tell him that Hockney saw a vision of the future. According to Hockney, they're all going to lose their lives on the floor of death if they don't take Heljo to the spot he saw in his premonition. Aside from that, his vision also revealed that one of the holes connected to North City would reveal something that's going to help them. Garam has no idea what Hockney's talking about until Bam tells her how he possesses Daja's eyes. Upon learning this, Garam asks Hockney if he could tell her everything he saw in his vision in detail. Shortly after, we see that Garam, Bam, and the rest of the group have chosen to circle back to Heljo's location. Meanwhile, Yurik continues to zip through the floor of Death's passageways, hoping that he's not too late. In the meantime, Heljo not only spots Garam, but recognizes Hockney with them too. Garam reminds Yurik that they're not here for a straight-up skirmish. They're here to lure Heljo to the place Hockney saw in his vision. But you could always trust Yuri to go head first into trouble, as she ignores Garam's orders to stick to their mission and instead lunges at Heljo. A fight between Yuri and Heljo ensues, and the ruler of South City uses a technique called Claws of the Red Thrissa to attack the princess. Yuri dodges it, but she's surprised that Heljo was able to nick her on the cheek. Garam then jumps in to bring some order to this mess and proceed with their task, with Kronka providing supporting fire with an ability called Snow Blaster, Ice Castle, to freeze Heljo in place. It doesn't work though, as Heljo easily breaks free from Kronka's Ice Blast. He then uses a technique called Zero Area to change the concentration of Shinsu within the area and try to force Yuri and Garam to fall hundreds of feet to the ground. But Kronka swoops in and saves the two princesses, while Heljo attempts to escape. On the other hand, Yuri starts to notice that Heljo's ability harkens that of an administrator's. Shortly after, Heljo comes across Bam. He then recognizes Bam's thorn and realizes that it's what allows the boy to use Shinsu within his domain. Unknown to Heljo, Garam and her companions actually planned this meeting. A flashback reveals that Garam came up with all of this. Specifically, Bam would lure Heljo to the place Hockney saw in his vision, while Garam, Evan, and Kronka do their part. That is to say, they're going to head to the hole that connects to North City to find the thing that would help them defeat Heljo. In fact, Garam believes that the thorn is the reason Bam is able to take out immortals on this floor as well as augment Hockney's prescience. In the present, the plan works as Bam regroups with Mada, Hockney, and Yuri to lure their enemy to the prophesied place. Heljo, on the other hand, calls for his remaining generals to back him up, so Sanchez and Charlotte follow suit. The chase eventually leads them to one of the many holes in South City. Heljo and Sanchez attempt to trap our heroes in a pincer movement, but Sanchez just ends up hitting his boss when Bam and the others evade his attack. Heljo then uses an ability called Heljo Blood Flood to, well, flood the entire hole with blood. But Bam and his allies make it out of the passageway and into the place Hockney saw in his vision before they could get caught in Heljo's attack. Yuri then tries to attack Heljo in spite of Bam's pleas not to, since she can't use Shinsu in this place. But Yuri still does what she wants and even impresses everyone when she leaps into the air with nothing but her own physical prowess. Too bad though, because Sanchez manages to hit Yuri with an energy blast before she could slash Heljo. Bam catches her in midair while Heljo forces them to surrender. In the meantime, we see that Garam, Evan, and Kronka have arrived in the hole connecting to North City. Unknown to them, Yurik is in the same hole, hiding behind one of the pillars nearby. Let's just say Yurik isn't his actual self right now, as he panics and thinks of a way for Garam to avoid spotting him. And it's here we find out why he's so anxious. For one, Yurik reveals that he and Garam aren't actually a couple. In truth, Yurik has fallen in love with her ever since they first met. But Garam has rejected Yurik time and time again. In fact, it got so bad that Garam ended up banning Yurik from ever visiting the Floor of Death. As he puts it, he tried to hook up with other girls after that, but he couldn't forget about Garam. So when he heard about what Heljo turned into, Yurik decided to get on the princess's good side by defeating him without Garam knowing about it. And this might even finally make her fall in love with him. But since Garam is here right now, the chances of that happening are extremely low. As a matter of fact, Yurik starts crying like a baby when he realizes his plans have been screwed. On the other hand, Kronka tells Garam to try doing what Hockney said. A short flashback reveals that Hockney also saw Garam saying something in his vision. In the present, the princess mentions those specific lines, which goes, "I'll forgive everything. I've waited a long time for you to return. If you help me this time, let's forget about everything and start over seriously. Yurik hears all of this and takes it as his cue to finally regain his confidence and reveal himself to Grom. He tells her that he's going to help her and even refers to the princess as my lady. Well, let's just say that Grom's absolutely mortified to find out that the thing from Hockney's prophecy is none other than her annoying suitor. Somewhere else, Heljo threatens Bomb, Hockney, and the rest of his friends before shooting them with an energy blast. Yuri tries to jump in front of the beam to protect Bomb, but he stops her from doing so. All of a sudden, they hear a guy's voice telling them how Heljo is such a reckless idiot who's been giving Yuri a hard time. Yuri recognizes who it belongs to, and just like that, Yuri gets on the scene and declares that their hero has finally arrived. As Yurik puts it, he's so full of power of love that he's invincible right now, as he sends Heljo flying with a single punch. Yurik then confronts his old friend, telling Heljo how much he's changed since they last saw each other. Heljo then asks what Yurik is even doing on the floor of death, and the irregular basically answers that he's here to confirm the bad news he's heard about Heljo. As Yurik puts it, he originally gave him the Red Thruster to do some good in the world but ended up just being another filthy fascist. However, Heljo really isn't in the mood for a lecture, so he demands Yurik to hand over Bomb and his friends instead or he'll take them by force. Yurik notices Heljo charging up a blast and informs Bomb that they're going to make a run for it, since he's the only one who can use Shinsu right now. Hockney, on the other hand, uses his eyes and takes point to allow Bomb to navigate the trajectory of Heljo's blast and avoid it. Hockney manages to help Bomb maneuver through successive energy blasts from their enemy. Afterwards, Yurik asks Heljo what happened that turned him into a tyrant again. We then get another exposition, as Heljo pretty much condemns the people of the Floor of Death for going against his decision to leave this place. He tells Yurik that he had proposed to use the soul-stirring ladle to help everyone escape the Floor of Death, but Dasa prevented this from happening. According to Dasa, they had to stay here in order to fulfill their people's destiny. Still, Heljo lobbied for his proposal, which only made Dasa threaten him with life in prison. Eventually, some of Dasa's men realized Heljo's point and decided to switch sides. Afterwards, Heljo pushed for Dasa to step down as ruler of South City. In response, Dasa branded Heljo a traitor and claimed that the youngest member of the Grand Family was the rightful heir to the soul-stirring ladle in South City. Heljo even rants about how the Grand Family's youngest member wasn't even a kid. The dude just stopped growing because of a magic spell. Regardless, the Floor of Death had an election to solve the problem of succession. Now, Heljo ended up losing to the Grand Family's heir, which then prompted him to stage a coup in order to finally depose Dasa. He succeeded in taking Dasa's old position, but failed to acquire the soul-stirring ladle, believing that Dasa had destroyed it. Now, Heljo just wants to get himself out of the Floor of Death regardless of what its people think. In the middle of his rant, Hockney sees a vision and thinks Bomb might lose his life during Heljo's next attack. Heljo then launches a huge energy ball at Bomb just as Hockney warns him about it. Deep inside the castle, Dali attacks Hwaryun's group and brands them as thieves for conspiring to take the soul-stirring ladle. Nearby, Rachel gets the idea that she could make a deal with Madarako if she gets to steal the artifact. Meanwhile, Hwaryun dumps exposition about how the soul-stirring ladle was originally the property of the state, meaning the people of the Floor of Death. However, Dasa and Daja broke their original promise to share the spirit room and ladle with everyone who wanted to get out of this place. Instead, they rounded up anyone who opposed them or tried to escape. Even worse, these two leaders forcibly transferred the souls of the people they branded as traitors to the bodies of the Leech Guardians. This then turned them into unwilling servants of the Floor of Death. In the end, Hwaryun chastises the Grand Family for all their shady dealings, as she declares that they're going to take the soul-stirring ladle. Dali, of course, is having none of that. He defends his predecessor's actions by explaining it as a way to fulfill their people's destiny, to wait for the coming of their savior. In the meantime, Rachel makes a move. Dali then uses an ability called Sniper Eyes to try and shoot Kun, but he's able to defend himself and trap Dali using Ennacor's Mystery Sphere. Afterwards, Endorsi uses Bonbon to allow their group to gain distance from Dali. However, Dali spots one of Kun's lighthouses and senses Beta's presence in it. He then sends out an invisible observer, Little B, toward it. At the same time, Kun and the rest of the group make their way towards the soul-stirring ladle. Kun starts to get the idea that perhaps they could enlist Heljo to their cause if they manage to get their hands on the ladle. Sachi then informs the rest of the group that his squad has taken out the guards in front of Dasa's prison. Kun and the others rush towards Sachi's location, but they're forced to stop in their tracks when Kun sees Dali's Little B destroy one of his lighthouses. This breaks the Mystery Sphere and allows Dali to lunge at Kun. He's too late to react to the ambush, but Kun is surprisingly saved when Rachel arrives and uses her lighthouse to freeze Dali in place. Even more surprising is when Rachel tells Dali to lay off Kun and the others, as she informs him that they're Bomb's friends. Still, Dali is firm in his stance to keep the ladle on the Floor of Death, which prompts Rachel to tell him that this whole custody battle for the artifact is getting on her nerves. Rachel then goes on a speech about how you should make your own destiny, but it ends up falling on deaf ears, because as soon as Dali listens to her speech, he declares that she now has to be eliminated as well. Outside, Bomb and his crew have found some cover. Yurik then instructs Bomb to go around Heljo so that they could flank him. Yurik has issues with this plan, since Yurik can't use a Shinsu in this place, but the co-captain of Wolhike Song tells her that it's all good. He doesn't need Shinsu to throw down, because now he's taken off his silver anklet and plans on literally knocking some sense into Heljo. Yuri recognizes the anklet and starts wailing on Yurik about what he's been doing outside. Hockney steps in to stop the princess from giving Yurik a concussion, informing her that he saw Yurik's true intentions in another one of his visions. We then find out that Yurik's planning on injecting Heljo with a special serum that would separate him from the Red Thrissa. As Yurik says, a Wohaik Song agent stole the serum from Fug in the workshop. In the meantime, Sanchez regroups with his boss and Heljo orders him to focus on capturing Yuri and Hockney while he deals with Yurik. Shortly after, Yurik and Bomb face off with Heljo again. Heljo senses the power emanating from Yurik while he reminisces about the first time they met. It turns out that Yurik struck a friendship with Heljo back when he was wandering around the holes with a broken heart. Yurik expresses how glad he was to meet a forward-thinking, optimistic dude on the floor of death back then, and he honestly believed that Heljo might be the guy who would get everyone out of this place. This explains why he entrusted the Red Thrissa to the guy. But now that Yurik sees him, he thinks Heljo has become smaller and more pathetic than when he was just a simple hole repairman. After listening to all this, Heljo just acts out and tries to blast our two heroes. In response, Yurik tells Bomb to fly towards the lake to avoid any unwanted casualties. Sanchez tries to intercept them, but Bomb is able to maneuver around him with Hockney's help. Heljo then follows suit as he commands Sanchez to capture Hockney and Yuri. Shortly after, Bomb and Yurik reach the lake. They notice Heljo rushing right towards them, so Yurik directs his fist right into their opponent's face using 10% of his power. His single punch sends Heljo flying, and it's so powerful that it causes a tsunami of red liquid. Not too far away, Yuji watches this unfold and thinks about sending Mizuno something harder to beat next time. On the other hand, Bomb is downright slack-jawed after seeing Yurik's power firsthand, while Heljo rants about how Yurik is able to harm him in his domain. In the meantime, Yurik continues to grind Heljo's gears by telling him how he's gotten smaller. He even tries to prove it by launching a wave of red Shinsu towards the two, but Yurik easily dissipates it with the snap of his fingers. He then asks Bomb if he could make Shinsu bubbles towards Heljo's direction to help Yurik platform his way towards the enemy. Bomb follows Yurik's orders as he makes his way toward Heljo. At the same time, Yurik explains how Heljo has gotten smaller because of the way he used his powers to oppress his people instead of helping them. Yurik then cocks back a punch as he asks Heljo why he gave up on his dream to let everyone out of the floor of death. Heljo braces for impact, but the punch never comes. Instead, Yurik grabs him by the wrist to keep talking to his old friend. However, Yurik suddenly notices that the Red Thrissa has taken over Heljo's body. It then threatens Yurik, who thinks this matchup is going to be interesting. Back inside the castle, Rachel goes on another one of her classic entitled rants, as she tells Dilly that she's the savior the people of the floor of death have been waiting for. The conversation takes a super awkward turn when he tells Rachel that no, she's not the one. And as always, Rachel gets a stupid look on her face when Dilly drops that truth bomb on her. Still, she insists that she's a hotshot and orders Dilly to give up on the ladle so that she could ultimately use it to get the thorn fragment. But Dilly has had enough of her delusional blabber, as he tells Rachel to shut up and calls her a fake savior. As he puts it, he will absolutely not hand her the thorn fragment, and he and the people of this floor will stay here to keep guarding it. Nearby, we see that Beta has finally emerged from the lighthouse that Dilly broke earlier, while they listen to more of Rachel's incessant yapping. This time, she forgets that she wasn't even invited to this mission in the first place and accuses Dilly of building her up as their savior so that they could use her powers to basically keep everyone trapped on the floor of death. But proving just how inept and dumb she usually is, Rachel runs her mouth so much that it takes Beta and Kun to notice that Dilly has just sent one of his little bees to hopefully shoot Rachel in the neck. And without any of her gullible marks to save her, Rachel has no way of dodging Dilly's little bee, which hits its target. She writhes in pain, as Dilly explains that his invisible observers carry a poison in their stingers that take out their targets slowly. Meanwhile, Endorsi informs Kun that Hwaryun has slipped away from the rest of the group again while they were busy gawking at the satisfying scene in front of them. Kun gives Hwaryun an earful when he calls her via pocket. But Kun correctly speculates that Hwaryun is using this distraction to get her hands on the ladle. She then instructs Kun to keep distracting Dilly while she secures the artifact. Outside, the Red Thrissa goes on an exposition dump of its own, as it tells Yurik how it's more or less the reincarnation of the administrator that fell on this floor. It needed a host's body to possess in order to become complete and was able to dig deep inside Heljo's mind when he lost the election to the Grand Family's heir. And as the Red Thrissa puts it, it wants to get out of the floor of death to hunt down Enryu and pay him back for the humiliation it took when it fell by Enryu's hand. The Red Thrissa then blasts Yurik with a wave of Shinsu, but he just eats it up. Afterwards, the two combatants get into it at close range as Yurik and the Red Thrissa trade devastating punches. It eventually gets the better of Yurik when it lands a flurry of body shots before hitting him with a couple more Shinsu blasts. And just to make sure he doesn't get up, the Red Thrissa activates a technique called Red Thrissa Blood Messiah to blast Yurik into smithereens. Needing an audience for his nefarious deeds, the Red Thrissa then turns toward Bomb and explains how he's going to suck up all the Shinsu in this area to suffocate him and his friends. All of a sudden, everyone from Yuri to Kun to Dilly starts to feel the effects of the Red Thrissa's ability. In the meantime, Yurik is just lying down on a Shinsu bubble and expresses how disappointed he is with the Red Thrissa's performance. We also see that the serum that he had is now empty. Not too far away, Bomb attempts to gather power into his thorn to save everyone, even going as far as channeling the millions of souls inhabiting his body. On the other side, the Red Thrissa wonders if Bomb is able to absorb this much power because of the thorn. but it immediately realizes that there's something else that's helping Bomb. He turns toward Bomb's chest and sees a blue ball of light forming around it. The Red Thrissa identifies this as a colossal soul before it sees the eye of the creature living inside Bomb staring back at it. The Red Thrissa is shocked when it sees this and asks Bomb why he has the power of the administrator inside his body. Their conversation is cut short though because Yurik arrives atop a Shinsu bubble. He then reveals that he had successfully injected the Red Thrissa with the serum during their clash. After hearing this, the creature goes on one last-ditch effort to pummel Yurik. In response, Yurik decides to speed up Helljoe's exorcism the old-fashioned way, a swift left uppercut to the gut. It's super effective too, as the Red Thrissa spirit literally leaves Helljoe's body after this. With the two separated, the Red Thrissa tries to hit Yurik with a couple of energy blasts, but he just grabs it by the neck. At that point, Yurik drops some wisdom on his old friend, as he tells Helljoe that he doesn't need the power of the Red Thrissa, a power that eats away at their ideals and causes them to harm others purely for the sake of their own goals. And with that, Yurik squeezes hard on the Red Thrissa's neck until it pops like a pimple. An unconscious Helljoe then plummets down toward the ground hundreds of feet below them. Bomb's just about to make a move to save him, but Hockney tells Bomb that he's got this. That's just right too, because Bomb and Yurik aren't necessarily out of the proverbial woods just yet. Because with its dying breath, the Red Thrissa has managed to turn itself into a ticking time bomb that's currently gathering all the Shinsu in the area before dropping its payload. Seeing this, Yurik instructs Bomb to puncture a hole through the giant bomb with his own Shinsu. And even though he has no idea how he'd do it, Bomb accepts the request. He flies toward the center of the bomb and uses the combined powers of his thorn and the black hole sphere technique to poke a hole in his target. On the sidelines, Yurik recognizes the black hole sphere as the same technique that the leaders of the 10 great families use. Meanwhile, Kun's group can feel the Shinsu erratically moving all around them. In fact, the only person who's not affected by this is Beta, which makes Kun surmise that he's able to withstand this kind of environment due to his status as a living ignition weapon. Kun then asks Beta to take their team and Rachel to Hwaryun's location. Beta agrees but wonders why they'd want to save Rachel. In response, Kun tells him that they've got questions for her. While this is happening, Hwaryun has finally reached Dasa's prison where we find out that Helljoe has also taken the Grand Family's heir captive. We then discover that the guide that Helljoe took out in the past also had the same mission as Hwaryun, to grab the ladle in exchange for Dasa and his heir's freedom. Dasa agrees to the deal and hands the ladle to Hwaryun. She then orders Ai to open the cell. Beta and the others reach Hwaryun, as Kun tells her that they have to bolt out of the castle. Before leaving, Dasa asks Hwaryun if their prophesied savior has arrived. But instead of selling Bomb as a bona fide god like she usually does, Hwaryun tells Dasa that their savior has not arrived. Hearing this, Dasa declares that he'll keep on waiting. The group then teleports to Bomb's location using Bong Bong, only to see a gigantic Shinsu cyclone looming over South City. Meanwhile, Bomb digs deep and manages to crack the bomb. Yurik then channels energy in his hand, says goodbye to the Red Thrissa, and destroys the bomb through the puncture hole that Bomb created. In the aftermath, Bomb unwittingly absorbs the remnants of the Red Thrissa's soul. In fact, Yurik's even able to sense the Red Thriss's power emanating from Bomb after this. Still, he brushes it off and tells Bomb that they should go find his friends now. Oh, and Yurik also wonders if Bomb is interested in becoming a part of Wohaik's song. Somewhere else, we discover that Joaquin has finally entered the spirit room with Karaka, as he gets all excited about becoming white again. Joaquin can't wait to eat all the souls inside this place, but Karaka wonders how he could do it all by himself. In response, Joaquin lets Karaka know that spells concerning souls are his specialty. So instead of breaking the seal inside the spirit room, Joaquin plans on crafting a spell that would override it and transfer the souls to him. Not a moment passes when Joaquin summons his sword and starts slicing the soul container. Meanwhile, Yurik doesn't go with the hard sell and trying to recruit Bomb to Wohaik's song. He tells the boy to just think it over and the two head over to Kun's location after receiving a call from Bomb's pocket. Bomb reunites with his best friends shortly after, while Hockney stands in front of a still unconscious Joe. As usual, Bomb and Kun report about each of their missions. Yurik then appears in front of the group to the bewilderment of everyone. Yuri then gets on the scene moments later. When she tries getting to the bottom of how Yurik knows Garam, Yurik does his best to slip away, prompting Yuri to chase him. Kun and Bomb see the two high rankers flying around in the air, and Kun can't help but tell his best friend that he must be involved in something big again. They then get back to business, as Kun informs Bomb that they've captured Rachel. Aside from that, he lets him know that she's been poisoned, with Cherry's power is the only thing slowing down its effects. Hwaryun then links up with the rest of the group and tells everyone that they've got to leave as soon as possible because of a bad feeling she has about this place. Not too far away, Joe finally wakes up in front of Hockney. We find out that Yurik knocked him out so bad that he lost his memory of the fight that just ensued. Joe then threatens to take Hockney's eyes. In response, Hockney puts Joe in his place by whipping him like the naughty boy that he is, all the while chastising Joe for all the devious things he's done as the ruler of South City. To Hockney's credit, he tells Joe that he was originally planning to take him out, but seeing Joe in this state made him change his mind. Instead, he tells Joe to just wake up and live a better life while he still can. Hockney leaves and Sanchez arrives shortly after. He calls for his master, but Joe pretends to have amnesia for fear that the people of South City would definitely make him suffer if they find out that he's lost his powers. But Yurik ruins this when he approaches Joe and pretty much tells everyone within earshot that he's back to being a complete loser like before. Joe then lashes out and blames Yurik for giving him the Red Thrissa in the first place, and then taking it away. Props to Yurik though, because he admits to his mistakes for giving Joe that power in the first place. As he puts it, all that Joe accomplished with the Red Thistle was the privilege to lock himself inside his room, watch TV, and read comic books. Yurik then goes full big brother on Joe and urges him to find his true self again, to start over and live a happy life. Still, Joe acts out, but all that drama is interrupted when both Joe and Sanchez suddenly feel their souls being ripped away from their bodies. That's because Joaquin has just finished casting his spell and is now in the process of absorbing all the souls on the floor of death. Inside the spirit room, Caraca marvels at how beautiful White looks even though he's past his prime. While just outside Joe's castle, Yurik stares at his old friend's now lifeless body. In the spirit room, Joaquin finally turns into White and couldn't be happier about it. However, Caraca informs him that their best move right now would be to leave rather than continue hunting down Bomb. As Caraca puts it, Yurik's presence has tipped the scales heavily against their favor. Caraca suggests that it's going to be more ideal if they return to the train and get White to absorb his last clone. Surprisingly, White agrees to this proposition without so much as a single groan. Back in South City, Yurik suspects that Fug is the one responsible for tampering with the spirit room just now, which has caused each and every citizen of the floor of death to collapse. Yurik gets heated and attempts to head over there this instant, but Yuri manages to calm him down and get some intel from Bomb first, since he's been there before. Not too far away, Bomb's group has also discovered that South City's inhabitants have suddenly lost their consciousness. More concerning is when Hockney calls for him and sees that Mata has also fallen victim to White's spell. With everything that they've witnessed, Kun and Bomb conclude that Caraca has most likely reached the spirit room and caused all of this. Yuri and Yurik arrive at their location as well, and the entire group decides to make their way to the spirit room. Before leaving, Horion advises Bomb to stay put, since Caraca would surely try to attack him if they come across each other. But this is Bomb, so there's no changing his mind once it's set. He also still has to get the thorn fragment that the Jaw is keeping in his castle. Well aware of this, Horion instead volunteers to accompany Bomb to keep an eye on him during this mission. Bomb, Yurik, Kun, Endorsi, Horion, and Yuri then make their way to the spirit room, while Bomb tasks Boro and a few others with guarding Rachel until they come back. Not long after, they reach the Jaw's castle only to find that the old man has been knocked out. Horion brings more bad news when she tells the team that Caraca and his companions have run away. On the bright side, Horion informs them that she knows a secret passage that only members of Fug use, which is most likely the same route that Caraca has taken. Horion warns the group that there's a chance they might not even catch up to their targets, but Yurik insists she lead the way. In the meantime, White and Caraca fly across one of the many pathways on the floor of death. Caraca continues to sell him the idea that he'd be better equipped to deal with Yurik once he reclaims his original body, and again, White agrees. This makes Caraca believe that White's newly rediscovered power has also changed his temperament for the better. We then get the reveal that Caraca has chosen to go through a different pathway instead of the one that only Fug knows about. It's a smart move that throws off Horion and her crew from finding them. The two eventually reach the entrance to the hall to see that the final gatekeeper has become deactivated. They get a bit of a scare when they see the bamboo spears falling towards them, but immediately realize that they're just dropping aimlessly on the ground and not actively being hurled at them. Caraca and White then take a moment to marvel at the final gatekeeper, calling it a magnificent puppet that was able to do its job while it was active. But they really have no time for sightseeing, so White decides to destroy the final gatekeeper before they continue their journey. The two then spot a large hole in the ceiling and head towards it. We also see just how much White has changed, as he feels just a tiny bit guilty for leaving Rachel and the rest of his team on the floor of death, but he snaps out of it and gets a move on. All of a sudden, both Caraca and White stop in their tracks when a powerful force paralyzes them. A voice coming from inside the hole then addresses the two, telling them how he's found the bugs responsible for destroying his puppet, the final gatekeeper. Somewhere else, Garam has Evan trapped in ice, as she pressures him to keep her existence and everything that's happened on this floor secret from the Jahad family. Evan agrees and makes it known that he has no plans of snitching on her anyway. Plus, he's a guide, and he doesn't want to screw up a path on the tower just to curry a favor from Jahad. Lastly, Evan has no intention of creating conflict with Yurik. Garam is convinced after hearing all this, so she instructs Kronka to free Evan. Evan, on the other hand, has one question for the princess. After everything he's witnessed here, Evan makes an educated guess that Garam hasn't been operating on the floor of death alone. So he asks her if she's working with someone else. Garam admits it and goes on to say that this same person also helped her escape to the floor of death when Jahad started hunting her. On top of that, this same guy also assisted Garam in cutting off the floor of death from the outside world. And to drive the point home, Garam mentions that what this person did for her could only be done by 10 other people in the tower. This same guy happens to be none other than Pobedo Gustang, the same man we saw earlier at the conclusion of the workshop battle arc and one of the leaders of the 10 great families. Right now, Gustang floats in front of Caraca and White instantly recognizes him as one of the 10 great families' lords. Back at Garam's location, Evan continues asking questions about who exactly this person is, now that he has a clue that there might be a traitor among the leaders of the 10 great families. However, Garam tells him to stop sticking his nose in it, since it'll do him no good. The princess then explains that this person has been pulling the strings behind the scenes on the floor of death all along. For one, he helped Asa and Dajah complete the spell that would preserve the thorn in this place. For another, Gustang also created the whole security system on the floor of death, which forbids outsiders from entering and its inhabitants from leaving. As a matter of fact, even Grom has her suspicions about this silent partner of hers, thinking that perhaps Gustang even wanted Fug to take the thorn and that maybe he orchestrated each and every event that led Evan and his companions to reach the floor of death. In any case, Grom tells Evan to forget about it. The more he asks questions, the smaller he would end up feeling. At the same time, White informs Karaka that they're standing before a lord. White is able to identify him as someone from the Pobadao family based on his appearance, while Gustang tells him that he knows White stole all those souls from the spirit room. Gustang even throws shade at White's family, the Ari, as he comments on how he didn't expect that they teach thievery within White's clan. Curiously, Gustang also tells White that he already paid the price for stealing the souls, and to his surprise, Gustang tells White that he's not going to stop him from leaving the floor of death. As he steps aside and allows White to pass, he gets suspicious of Gustang but still takes the offer as White hurries past the lord and towards the exit. Somewhere else, Yurik gets frustrated when he and Hworyun discover that Karaka and White aren't in the secret fog hole. We then find out that they had split their search party into two, with Bomb, Yuri, Kun, and Endorsi in another path that Hworyun thought their targets might otherwise take. Both parties then feel a tremor coming from not too far away, so they all decide to head to its source. We find out that the tremor was caused by White's impact when he came plummeting toward the red liquid after he tried entering the exit Gustang pointed out to him earlier. Gustang then reveals what he meant when he said White had already been punished for his crime. It turns out that the rule forbidding any souls connected to the spirit room from leaving the floor of death isn't just applicable to its inhabitants. It works on anyone who becomes tied up with the spirit room's souls. Even Karaka is surprised to find out about this, while White goes back to his original personality and starts complaining about this rule. Meanwhile, Gustang continues to patronize White, stressing that the only one he could blame for this new prison of his is his thirst to try and replace his father, Ari Han. White snaps and tries flying through as many holes as possible but gets repelled by each one. When Gustang gets bored, he decides to forcibly remove the souls that White had stolen from the spirit room. But he does leave him with his life. In fact, Gustang was in the middle of a teachable moment when Yurik suddenly teleported to their location. Gustang instantly senses that Yurik used spatial distortion to get here so fast. In turn, Yurik confronts Gustang and asks him what he's doing here. Gustang says it's none of Yurik's business and throws the question right back at him. In turn, Yurik doesn't answer Gustang's question and instead demands the Lord to hand over the souls. Gustang presumes that Yurik wants to gain their power, but he clarifies that he just wants to get Joe's soul back. Gustang gets all condescending about how Yurik is like a whale stuck in a fishbowl, which explains why he has little friends like Joe. He then tells Yurik something that he's repeated for a long time now, that only people equal to Yurik in the tower are the leaders of the 10 great families and Jahad himself. Gustang even goes on to call Wohaik Sung more or less a stupid game that Yurik and his friends are playing. But even after all that smoke, Gustang agrees to put all the souls back to their proper place. According to him, he doesn't want Yurik blowing his top and suddenly annihilating the entire Pobadao family, which is something that's really possible for someone like him. All of a sudden, Gustang falls quiet when Yuri's party arrives on the scene. That's because he has just set his eyes on Bomb. And after seeing the boy, he tells Yurik that there's actually one more person in the tower who could match their abilities. Gustang then turns to Bomb and addresses him as the son of Arlene. He introduces himself and tells Bomb that he's been waiting for him for a long time, as Gustang asks him for a favor. Somewhere else, a girl asks someone who she simply refers to as Warrior why he's up so late. This warrior says that he's watching his prey, and he looks like an all too familiar crocodile spear bearer, Rak Wraith Razor. At this moment, Rak stands on a beach where he watches a giant metallic creature from a distance. He tells the girl that he plans on attacking it alone, but she convinces him to stay put when she makes him realize how outmatched he is. We then find out from Rak that he just woke up in this place after what happened at Namehunt Station and has no idea where he is right now. Back on the floor of death, Gustang stays true to his word and places the souls from the spirit room back into the respective owners, from Joe to Mata to everybody else. Meanwhile, Gustang invites Bomb to have a talk. Bomb then asks him about this favor that Gustang wants him to do. The Lord clarifies that it's actually more of a test. In the meantime, Yuri wonders why Gustang has been keeping tabs on Bomb, not to mention who Arlene is. Just above, Gustang explains that he wants to test whether Bomb is the one destined to take the thorn, climb the tower, and change the tower. Simply put, Gustang wants to know if Bomb really is the savior that Arlene spoke of. Hearing Arlene's name, Bomb asks Gustang about his mom, to which Gustang says that he and Arlene's personality really suited each other. But when Bomb asks Gustang about his dad, he explicitly tells the boy that he refuses to talk about his dad. The only thing he mentioned about Bomb's father is that Gustang thinks he was the absolute worst person he's ever met. Bomb tries to press the subject, but Gustang just tells him he'll learn more about his dad eventually. In the meantime, Gustang tells Bomb that he's going to grant him a favor before they proceed with his test. Gustang mentions that he's an expert in science and medicine, and upon hearing this, Bomb gets all soft again and uses his favor on Rachel. Somewhere else, Yura and Wanyan spy on Sachi and Boro with a hidden camera they installed on Rachel's ear. They're aware that Rachel must have been captured by Bomb's group, and Yura asks Wanyan if he could ask his old friends to help Rachel escape. Wanyan tells her to dream on, because there's no way in hell he's going to do that. Still, Wanyan thinks this isn't good news. That's because his real mission is to basically assassinate Rachel. But now that she's with Bomb's group, this has just become way more difficult than Wanyan initially thought. Yura and Wanyan continue snooping on Rachel until they see Bomb and Gustang arrive inside the room. All of a sudden, Yura's lighthouse malfunctions the moment it glimpses Gustang with its camera. Meanwhile, Bomb tells Boro and the others that Gustang isn't a threat. Again, Gustang stays true to his word and instantly removes the poison from Rachel's body with just a glance. Afterwards, he invites Bomb to talk in private about the favor he wants to ask the boy. While this is happening, Yurik reunites with Joe and tells his old friend that he might now have a way to help him get out of the floor of death. But instead of celebrating this, Joe tells Yurik to help others get out of this place instead of him. That's because Joe has decided to stay on the floor of death, given that he won't be able to survive without the great power he once had. While in tears, he tells Yurik not to force him and blames himself for becoming a tyrant when granted with a great power like the Red Thrissa. Not long after, we find Bomb and Gustang having a talk inside the spirit room's innermost part, right inside a Shinsu waterfall. Gustang then reveals that the thorn fragment he's been looking for is hidden in this waterfall. It's still sealed, but Gustang promises Bomb that he'll break it if he accepts his proposition. Gustang then explains the specifics of his request. According to him, there's something that Gustang has been trying to get his hands on for ages now. The problem is that Jahad hid it in a place where even he couldn't go. Bomb correctly surmises that it must be in the regulars area, and Gustang goes on to explain that the thing he's looking for is kept inside the Hell Train's hidden floor. Gustang then goes on a full exposition dump about the specifications of the fabled hidden floor. As he puts it, those who clear the entire train obtain the privilege to record their name and a trace of themselves in the Hell Train system. This information then remains in the train system like a kind of artificial intelligence and all come together to form what's called the virtual floor. The virtual floor is pretty much an entire world of its own that's similar to an entire floor within the tower, and those who clear the train obtain the privilege to temporarily sync themselves with the version of themselves in that place. Then we get the rules of the hidden floor. 1. Anyone who reveals details about the existence of this floor to the outside world loses both their data and their memory. 2. Only your data remains and you can't enter the floor again once you become a ranker. And 3. You cannot update your data or bring any items or goods obtained from the hidden floor outside. According to Gustang, he's exempt from some of the rules he just mentioned, but there's no way for him to return there since he's a ranker. As such, he wants Bomb to use an artifact called the Master Key to get in there. Now, the Master Key allows its holder to enter the hidden floor, but they won't be able to save their data within the train system. Regardless, this will help Bomb look for the thing Gustang wants to acquire. On the other hand, Gustang warns Bomb that Jahad entrusted the thing he's been looking for to a certain piece of data on the hidden floor that he trusts the most, and it might end up being the biggest obstacle. And that is the data of young Jahad from back when he had just cleared the Hell Train. And right now, young Jahad is watching Rak and the girl in front of the beach with his lighthouse, as he wonders how Rak entered his domain. Back inside the waterfall, Gustang tells Bomb that he's going to reveal more details about the thing he's looking for once the boy brings it back for him. But he does guarantee that it wouldn't hurt Bomb and his friends. Gustang then asks Bomb if he's going to accept the deal. Instead of answering, Bomb attempts to make a counteroffer and asks Gustang if he could free the inhabitants of this floor and allow them to get out once Bomb delivers what he wants. Gustang replies by telling Bomb that removing an already completed spell is no easy task even for a lord like him. On top of that, Gustang explains that Grom would be put in danger because there's a good chance that the secrets of this floor will get leaked to the outside world. Furthermore, the people on the floor of death just got what was coming to them, since they chose the Grand Family over Joe. Simply put, they don't want any changes. Gustang makes Bomb realize that he shouldn't force people to leave just because he thinks it wasn't a good choice. Meanwhile, Yura tries to pressure the rest of her team to rescue Rachel when Karak appears in front of them. The Fug Slayer tells the group to come with him so that they could leave this floor. Somewhere else, Yuri gets a call from Evan and Grom telling her to meet up. Dorsey overhears this and forces Yuri to allow her to tag along. Yuri gives in and they use Bong Bong to teleport to Grom's location. We find out that Grom is the person that Dorsey wanted to meet on the floor of death. In addition to that, she found out about Grom from Anak. As for Grom and Anak's relationship, Grom reveals that she took in Anak after her mom passed but couldn't stop her from climbing the tower. Grom then asks Dorsey why she's been looking for her. In answer, Dorsey says that she just wanted to see what an ex-Princess of Jahad looked like. And when Grom asks her what Dorsey's impression of her is, Dorsey says that she's alright. That is to say, Grom neither seems happy or unhappy. As a matter of fact, seeing her has made Dorsey consider leaving the Order of Princesses too. She then bids Grom farewell and promises not to tell anyone about her. Before she leaves, Grom calls out to Dorsey and correctly surmises that she's in love with Bomb. She then gives the younger princess advice, telling Dorsey that there will come a time when she has to decide whether she likes Bomb because she thinks he could change the tower or if she actually likes him for the person that he is. In any case, Grom advises that Dorsey had better make up her mind or both she and Bomb might up getting hurt. In the meantime, Yurik mopes on the edge of a cliff on the floor of death. Gustang arrives and tries to make him realize that being friends with anyone below their status is stupid, since it's pretty much like being friends with a bug. Gustang goes on this whole speech about how anyone below them is basically an insect, to which Yurik replies with one thing, that Gustang, Jahad, and all the 10 great families are a bunch of idiots, which is why Yurik doesn't like hanging out with them. Yurik leaves and Gustang wonders if he's going back to see Grom. He tells him no because Yurik has no intention of doing what Grom really wants him to do, which Gustang correctly surmises as the assassination of Jahad. On the other hand, Yurik asks Gustang what he's planning to do with the Floor of Death now, and he tells him that he's going to erase everyone's memories so that things could go back to normal for its inhabitants. However, Gustang does offer Yurik to spare Joe's memories, but Yurik declines this option, telling Gustang that maybe he was right when he told Yurik how fish trapped in a fishbowl are happier when they don't know how vast the sea is. Still, Yurik doesn't completely buy this idea and tells Gustang that the reason fish try to reach the sea isn't because of memories, it's because of instinct. Later, Garam and Bomb bid each other farewell, with the princess reminding Bomb that none of the things that happen here are his fault. At the same time, Hockney also informs Mata that he's leaving with Bomb and his group. Mata then tells Hockney how proud he is of his old friend for having the bravery and resolve to leave the Floor of Death. In the end, Mata gives Hockney his blessing, telling him that it's his destiny to spread his wings and explore parts unknown. With everything prepared for their departure, Yurik helps his babies exit through one of the holes using a morsel of his power. And as Bomb leaves, he promises to pay the Floor of Death a visit again someday. With Bomb's group gone, Gustang proceeds to wipe the minds of the Floor of Death's inhabitants. Just before the spell kicks in, we get a tender scene featuring Mata, as he reveals it wasn't a coincidence that he found Hockney in the past. It turns out that Mata actually kept coming back to the usual spot hoping that he finds his best friend. Mata then closes his eyes and wishes Hockney freedom once he gets out of this floor just as Gustang's spell hits. And with that, the Floor of Death is over. Back inside the Hell Train, we see that Karaka has successfully transported Yura and the others to a secret corner within the vehicle. Wanyan spots the door at the end of the room and wonders what this place is. Somewhere else, the girl asks Rak what he's looking at in the sky, to which our favorite hot-headed alligator says he feels that the turtles, his companions, are coming. An hour passes and we discover that Yurik has taken Bomb and the rest of the group to the Wolhaig Song ship waiting for them above the skies of the Floor of Death. Bomb finds out that Yiwa and Hong have survived at Namehunt Station after Yurik and Yuji inform them of what happened. Bomb then asks about Rak, but Yuji confirms that he only truly found 2 survivors at Namehunt Station. On top of that, Yuji actually did a second search of the premises after Hong told him about Rak, but he still didn't find anything. Regardless, Kun reassures his best friend that Rak is probably alright somewhere out there. After that, Yurik gets down to business and asks Bomb a big question, if he's from the outside of the tower. You see, Yurik's suspicions about Bomb being an irregular like him stems from everything he just witnessed concerning the boy. For one, Fug gave Bomb the thorn. Then there's the fact that Fug had been keeping a serum that could separate a creature like the Red Therissa from its host. And finally, there's also Yuri and Gustang, who's been keeping an eye on Bomb this whole time. Bomb finally reveals to Yurik that he is indeed an irregular. However, he also informs him that he has very little idea of his origins, considering that he only learned about his parents recently. A surprise then hits Bomb when Yurik pretty much tells him that he's an irregular as well. Not only that, but Yurik even acts like a big brother to Bomb and gives him some sagely advice, for Bomb to not pay attention to any of the things he's seen, heard, or whatever people say to him in the tower. Simply put, Yurik just wants Bomb to be himself and not ever lose his identity. After this meeting, Yurik sends Bomb and his group on their merry way back to the Hell Train. Yuji consults with him if it's okay to send Bomb away, to which Yurik replies that they shouldn't hurry things. As he puts it, they're going to meet Bomb again someday in a higher place and they all could talk more by then. Still, something's bugging Yurik at the back of his mind, as he wonders if he's forgotten about something. Meanwhile, back in Kraka's secret room right in front of the doors to the hidden floor, Wanyan spots the doors and wonders where it leads to. Kraka admits that even he doesn't know. Wanyan then acts out and asks the Fug Slayer why he brought them here, to which Kraka makes it clear that he didn't rescue him and the others out of the goodness of his heart. He reveals that he's going to use them as bait to lure out Bomb and his friends. Somewhere else on the Hell Train, Bomb regroups with Sachi and the rest of the group. They then decide to call it a night, and Bomb notices that Endorsi has gotten somewhat cagey with him. When he asks Kun about this, his best friend tells him that he has no idea what's going on in the princess's mind. On the other hand, Yuri gives Bomb a bit of an ego boost before she heads off to look for Evan. Kun also bids Bomb a good night, but he sidebars his best friend to reveal that he's acquired the Master Key from Gustang. Bomb then elaborates his whole deal with Gustang, and Kun tells him that they should pay Poro a visit to find out more about the Master Key. Shortly after, Poro whips out the Hell Train's manual and shows details about the artifact. More exposition is dumped when Poro reads from the manual and we find out that you first have to get to a place called the Room of Time Past in order to use the Master Key. The Room of Time Past location is also shown, and it's exactly the same one that Karaka, Wanyan, and the others are currently in. An additional detail about the Room of Time Past is that you can only enter it at 9 p.m. train time. Once you get there, you'll find a door where you can use the Master Key. We then get the rules and guidelines about how the hidden floor works. 1. Those with data remaining on the floor cannot enter because of a data clash, so they can only enter the hidden floor after erasing their data. 2. You'll be stuck on the hidden floor forever if you fail to find its exit. Afterwards, Kun and Bomb decide to go search for the Room of Time Past. Somewhere else, Cherry reunites with her original teammates. Barrel checks up on her and is surprised to find out that Cherry just slept through the whole Floor of Death adventure she had. Cherry then leaves the room to sleep some more, as Barrel expresses how much she doesn't know about Cherry even though they've been traveling together for years. Unknown to her, Cherry is texting someone on the down low. In the meantime, we see Bomb and Kun having a chat about what they should do next. Kun tells him to keep the details about the hidden floor between the two of them for now. There's also a bit of time pressure here, since the last stop of the Hell Train is coming next, which means they have to locate the hidden floor by then. More importantly, we discover that Gustang actually handed the second Thorn fragment to Bomb, although it's still sealed. Kun checks up on his best friend about how he's doing now that he possesses the second Thorn fragment. In response, Bomb tells him that he wants to use some kind of reasonable method to decide who really has the right to keep this powerful artifact once Rachel wakes up. Bomb then shows Kun a preview of his newfound powers when he uses his Shinsu to create an entire room behind the hallway they're standing in. And as Bomb puts it, he's gotten a few upgrades since his battle with Heljo and the Red Thrissa. For one, his Shinsu production range has significantly increased. Not only that, but Bomb also feels like his ability to judge or read situations have greatly improved. So much so that Bomb likens his new abilities to the Red Thrissa itself. While this is happening, we find Hockney wondering what he'll do now that he's reclaimed his eyes. And although he doesn't exactly know how to use his own eyes, Hockney remains determined to find the last piece of red light. Hockney then speculates that his painting has something to do with the waterfall where Bomb got his thorn. He then surmises that red light isn't actually a picture of the thorn fragment, but instead a picture containing a hint about where to find it. In the end, Hockney starts to believe that the thorn is probably asking him to lead Bomb to the other fragment. Somewhere else, Gustang reports to someone that even though Yurik has suddenly become a major variable in their ongoing efforts, the big picture still hasn't changed. Gustang goes on to tell the unseen person he's talking to that the second thorn fragment has been delivered to Bomb. And just to prove that Rachel is one delusional nutjob, even Gustang calls her a pawn of the person he's speaking to, as he informs her that he gave Rachel a certain gift before he arrived at this location. On the Hell Train, Rachel sits up in bed and sees a little creature that looks like a divine sea fish floating in front of her. And as Gustang puts it, determining whether that power ends up being a disaster or a gift all depends on Bomb and Rachel. Inside her room, Rachel tries to grab the little thing floating in front of her, but it slips her grasp and suddenly disappears. Right in time too, because Bomb has just entered Rachel's room. Somewhere else, Kun holds a meeting with Sachi, Boro, and Team Barrel. He tells them about the upcoming quest to the hidden floor but spares a lot of details surrounding it, basically informing the group that they'll learn more once they're there. Kun then asks them if they're willing to volunteer to join them in spite of this. If they do, they simply have to go to the front of the sleeping car tomorrow at 2 p.m. After hearing what Kun had to say, Sachi gets an idea about what this mission is all about and decides to join. Next, Kun goes to Yuri's room to tell the other members of their group about his and Bomb's upcoming quest. This time, Kun reveals the details about their mission. Both Yuri and Dorsey volunteer to join, but Hwa-Yun passes on it. This makes Kun think that she knows something about the hidden floor that they don't. Hockney asks Kun where Bomb is, and he lets them know that he's currently paying Rachel a visit. Understandably, this doesn't sit well with the group, especially in Dorsey. Inside Rachel's room, Bomb has just explained the details of their quest to the hidden floor. Most notably, he has just told Rachel that whoever finds the thing that Gustang is looking for would get to keep the thorn. Rachel then lashes out at Bomb after hearing this, thinking that he's pretty much throwing her a bone, given how incompetent she is. However, Bomb reveals that he's offering this opportunity to Rachel not because he's still pig-whipped, but because they are enemies. That is to say, he wants to keep his and Rachel's rivalry as fair as possible. In addition to that, he also admits that he wants to bring Rachel, since they still need to get Hockney's painting back, and on top of that, Bomb has a lot of questions for her. Bomb then tells her to go to the sleeping car tomorrow afternoon, and he leaves. Outside Rachel's room, Bomb notices that something nicked his cheek, and it's heavily indicated that the divine sea fish that Gustang handed to Rachel was the one who did it. To his surprise, Bomb comes across a livid Dorsey making her way towards him. She confronts him about still being cuckolded by Rachel, but Bomb tells her that's not the case this time, since he only wants Rachel to join their group because he has information that he wants and he wants to help Hockney. But a girl can only take so much from a boyfriend that's too kind for his own good. So instead of dropping the subject, Dorsey takes matters into her own hands and tells Bomb that she'll deal with that scumbag Rachel to help Bomb with his quests. She even points out that adding a new team member to their group, especially someone as janky as Rachel, isn't up to Bomb alone. That is to say, he's going to need Dorsey's permission as well. To Bomb's credit, he doesn't wuss out and try to stop Dorsey from storming into Rachel's room. Instead, he agrees with everything Dorsey just said. Shortly after, Dorsey confronts Rachel and asks her how long she plans on clinging to Bomb's coattails. Regardless of what you think of Rachel, there's no denying that she's adept at reading and manipulating social cues, as she correctly surmises that Dorsey's jealous of her. The princess admits this, which then makes Rachel go on another one of her classic garden variety sociopathic woe is me speeches about how she's the one who's actually jealous of a princess like Dorsey. Now, a soft boy like Bomb would probably fall for this shtick, but not Dorsey, because when Rachel finishes her long-winded talk ultimately meant to throw Dorsey off her game, the princess declares that Rachel is beyond help. Dorsey then stands up from her seat and tells the scumbag that she's going to fix her warped personality in the other room. Dorsey then takes Rachel to a password-protected room where she throws her a needle and tells her to prove she's worthy of joining the team. Of course, Rachel starts complaining about how unfair this is, whereas she's just a backstabbing blonde ginger with delusions of grandeur, and Dorsey is a bona fide Jahad princess, so there's no way she could beat Dorsey. But the princess is hearing none of that garbage, as she sends out a warning shot to Rachel and zooms right in front of her. She then tells the freckled traitor that rules don't matter when you climb the tower, so Rachel sure as heck couldn't use a discrepancy in their power levels as an excuse to worm her way out of this. To Dorsey, Rachel only has two choices right now: shut her lying mouth and fight, or get the hell out of the tower. Rachel then tries to sneak in a jab, but it fails miserably when Dorsey counters with a knee to the body that sends her flying. Dorsey then takes this moment to drop some truth bombs on Rachel, telling her that between the two of them, Rachel is the one who's gotten far more than she deserves in spite of having no ability or making no effort to climb the tower. We then see that the divine sea fish has grown in size as it floats in front of Rachel to protect her. Just outside, Hockney approaches Baum and informs him that he came here because he saw a vision of someone who's near death here. Back inside the room, we find out that Dorsey can't see the divine sea fish, but she can feel its presence. So the princess decides to play it safe and test the battlefield first by hurling a needle at Rachel. The divine sea fish defends her and manages to snap Dorsey's needle in two, which surprises the princess, given that all she saw was that an unseen force broke the needle. On the other hand, we also see Rachel showing us how clueless she is, because even she doesn't know what just happened. All of a sudden, Dorsey gets a call from Yuri, who tells her to stop messing around with Rachel. In fact, Yuri has become such a sister figure to the younger Dorsey that she even lets her know that she's installed a camera in her pocket to keep an eye on Dorsey. And if she doesn't do as her big sister says, she's going to leak all the footage she got to the rest of the tower. With no other choice, Dorsey stands down and leaves, but not before telling Rachel that she's going to be watching her every move. Outside, Baum rushes toward Dorsey and asks her if she's alright, to which the princess coldly replies by saying nothing happened between her and Rachel. But as Dorsey walks along the hall, she wonders what that terrifying unseen force was all about. While all this is happening, we see that Hwaryun is hanging around the entrance to the Hell Train, as she speaks with someone on her pocket. She informs the person on the other end of the line that she's going to trade the ladle to Madarako after they get off the train, and according to her, she's going to go about it as the elders say. The call ends and Evan appears behind Hwaryun to dump a bit of exposition about what she meant by the elders. As we find out, Hwaryun was referring to the elders of Fug, who are shrouded in even more mystery than the Slayers. Still, Hwaryun remains quiet about all this and tells Evan that she has no plans of revealing her secrets to him. But when Evan asks her about the hidden floor and why she's not joining Baum there, Hwaryun replies by saying that there's an evil sleeping inside that place, one that Jahad left there after he became a god. The next day at around 2 p.m., Baum, Yuri, Kun, Dorsey, and Rachel wait for other members who might join them on this quest at the designated spot. Kun thinks that no one else would come, but he and Baum are pleasantly surprised when they see Hockney, Sachi, Boral, Barrel, and Cherry approaching their meetup spot. They then happily greet one another, while Rachel sulks in a corner like the bitter pissant that she is. Later, Baum and the rest of his companions make their way toward the Room of Time Past. Boral warns them that there are powerful guardians that might attack them. Yuri suggests that they split their team into two groups, with Yuri, Kun, and Dorsey banding together to break away from the others for now so that they could hunt down the guardian of this room. Shortly after, a winged beast attacks Rachel. The rest of Baum's group get ready for a battle, as the divine sea fish that Gustan gave her protects Rachel. But just so you know, Rachel still has no idea about this, since she hasn't seen the creature ever since it disappeared in front of her last night. More monstrous birds try to attack Rachel, but Baum is able to dispatch them with well-placed shots of his Shinsu. In fact, Baum's Shinsu control even gets praise from the rest of his friends, which of course makes Rachel even more insecure about being a scrub. On the other hand, Yuri's group has just reached the guardian of this room. She lets Dorsey and Kun handle it, and we find out that Kun has repaired his broken lighthouse, which has then allowed him to use Core once again. So Kun traps the guardian in the mystery sphere while Dorsey deals the finishing blow to the beast. Yuri then praises their efforts and a mysterious door opens in front of them, the entrance to the Room of Time Past. Meanwhile, deep inside the Room of Time Past, Kraka forces Wanyan to give up Baum's location. Wanyan refuses and lets him know that he really has no idea where Baum is. Kraka then threatens that he'll take out Misang if Wanyan doesn't give him what he wants. At that moment, Wanyan spots Kraka's ring and asks the Fug Slayer to have a private word with him. Kraka initially thinks Wanyan is up to something, but he ultimately agrees to have a talk when Wanyan tells him that he has the same ring. Back outside the Room of Time Past, Yuri's group reunites with the rest of the team to report that they'd found the entrance to the hidden floor. But since there are a couple of hours left before they could actually enter it, they all decide to take a break for now. Oh, and Yuri's group managed to get some snacks as reward for beating the Guardian too. Hockney then sidebars Kun and Baum to tell them about how he sensed a strange energy coming from Rachel. As he puts it, he's had this strange feeling since they got back on the train. But more damning is that Hockney felt that same energy earlier, when they were attacked by the flock of giant birds. After hearing this, we find out from Kun that although Hockney can't necessarily look into the future anymore, his eyes still have power. So they decide to heed his words and keep an even closer eye on Rachel. And Dorsey, on the other hand, is way ahead of them because she is literally not taking her eyes off Rachel at this moment. Yuri notices that Dorsey's all tense because of Rachel, so she gives her some sisterly advice to not let her emotions get ahead of herself and ruin everything. Still, Dorsey understandably can't help but think that Rachel's going to screw them over the moment they lower their guard. Back at Wanyan's location, Kraka asks him what he knows about the ring. Wanyan then gives the Fug Slayer his origin story, where Wanyan says that he's from the Red Light District. Kraka's curiosity is piqued after hearing this, but Wanyan tells him that he has no recollection of that place. As it turns out, Wanyan was raised by a nanny and he doesn't know his real parents. It's revealed that his nanny took him away from the Red Light District back when he was a baby. Plus, we also learn that the Red Light District has been burnt to the ground in the past. Wanyan goes on to tell Kraka that he pretty much treated his nanny like his own mom. What's more is that his nanny fondly called him a prince, and she gave him the ring when he turned 10, telling Wanyan that it's a token proving his stature as royalty. From then, Wanyan started to believe that he had to live up to his nanny's expectations. Sadly, Wanyan's surrogate mom fell ill, but before passing on, she told Wanyan how sorry she was for not raising the king's seed as well as she should have. This then made Wanyan realize that the nanny probably didn't love him like a son, but only took care of him out of a duty she received from a king. Wanyan also makes it a point that his nanny never told him anything about the Red Light District when she was still alive. Shortly after his nanny's demise, a strange man visited Wanyan and told him that the ring was an important key in the tower. This strange man also told Wanyan that if he ever happened to meet anyone with the same ring while climbing the tower, he should confirm it. Wanyan then became a regular not long after that and started to climb the tower. In the present, he tells Kraka that he plans on becoming a real prince. Wanyan then gets heated and asks the Fug Slayer what he knows about the Red Light District and why they have these rings. Before Kraka answers, however, he demands Wanyan to show him his ring. But Wanyan remembers that Rachel took it from him and informs Kraka about this. So Kraka tells him that there's no way he's going to trust Wanyan until he shows him his ring. We then see the clock in the train striking 9 p.m. as Bomb and his group set out to continue their journey towards the hidden floor. Back in the room of time past, Kraka tells Wanyan he's going to tell him everything once he gets his ring back from Rachel. Fair play to Kraka as well, because he's willing to let Wanyan know about the true identity of his nanny. Sadly, we'll have to wait a bit longer for that, as Kraka stops this big reveal mid-sentence when Bomb and the others reach their location. Confusion ensues as the two opposing teams face each other. Kraka doesn't waste time to ambush Bomb, but Yuri counters his attack with her Shinsu. Bomb then attempts to rescue Misang, and Kraka teleports behind him. Everyone thinks the worst was about to happen when Kraka summons one of his black orbs in front of Bomb at point-blank range. But Bomb is even more shocked when he sees that the Master Key has suddenly protected him from Kraka's technique. What's more is that the Master Key just continues to shine all the brighter with each passing second, while everyone inside the room is forced to shield their eyes. Meanwhile, Rak hears a loud explosion followed by a bright light coming out of a gigantic door above the skies of the beach he's currently on. And that is the end of Part 4 of Tower of God's Hell Train arc. Catch us next time as we cover the entire Hidden Floor arc, which will be Part 5 of the Hell Train arc. We are almost there for the finale of this long story arc. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel as it greatly supports us making this type of content for you guys. We'll see you in the next part.